Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to the return edition of Submission Radio. Dennis Schrader here with Kasper Rosalowski on the 15th of May. And a big weekend in MMA, UFC 198 just behind us. So much to talk about, Cass, and good to be back.
Oh man, it feels so good to be back, and you're absolutely right. A big, stacked, sexy show for you guys upon our return. Before we even talk about who's on the show, just a quick explanation on what happened basically last week. We were supposed to have a show. The long story is that we were going to be covering UFC Rotterdam. We had a guy who was going to go to the Netherlands and get a whole bunch of UFC Rotterdam footage. He pulled out last second, and because we had anticipated on having such a big workload that weekend, we figured we're not going to have 3 regular guest fighters. What we'll do is we'll get some journalists on the show, get them on, break down some fun topics, and then literally as we're about to do our actual show, the journalists pull out in the last second. I think somebody was sick, somebody else had a family emergency, somebody else's website went down, so everything basically went to shit, and we just figured, wow, well, we've got nobody to talk to stuff about, and who really wants to just listen to me and Dennis? Okay, there's a lot of people who want to listen to just me and Dennis, but we figured we're only going to give you, a premium quality show, and yeah, so we basically didn't do it last week, but we've got a stack one, we've got a sexy one this week, don't we, Dennis?
Yeah, that's right. It's like the backseat of a 1992 Holden Commodore. Everybody pulled out, so it wasn't a very good situation. But listen, I think our mums would have listened to the program, but we're happy to be back with some good guests. It's been a long time since we've spoken to you guys. We have a lot to break down. UFC 198, we're going to go through the fights, but we also have some pretty cool guests on this program. We're pretty excited to let you guys know who they are. Cass, do you want to let the people know? Do you want to break it to them? Break the news. Who is on Submission Radio?
Of course, I'll snap it out. Ricardo Lamas is the first one that's going to be on the show. I haven't spoken to Ricardo quite a while. He's going to be facing Max Holloway at UFC 199, so he returns to the show to have a good chat with us. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's obviously fighting Rory MacDonald at UFC 199. Sorry, not 199, Fight Night 89, I believe. That's a huge pivotal matchup for the welterweight division, and there's a lot to talk to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson about. And TJ Dillashaw will be last at the very end of the show, rounding out the interview segment, and we always love having TJ on. He didn't get that title rematch that he wanted. Obviously, Uriah Faber got it. He's fighting Rafael Sansa at UFC 200, so there's a lot to talk to TJ about. Cody Garbrandt made some comments, so we're going to ask him about that. So, yeah, we're actually going to have another journalist, a guy that you guys all love and generally appreciate, breaking UFC 198, but sometimes journalists go out and they watch fights and they drink at bars and they drink a bit too much, and then they can't do the show. So next time, hot lava.
Yeah, that's right. Well, next time is next week, guys, and we are excited about next week. No events on, and it gives us a really good opportunity to do something that we did before, but we like to bring back for the next episode, and that is giving you guys an opportunity to send in your questions. That's right. Submission Radio will be answering your questions next week for our talking segment. All you have to do is just email us at info@submissionradio.com. It's that simple. Now, we're not going to limit it to MMA-related questions. You can ask us a whole bunch of questions in different topics, movie reviews, game reviews, whatever it is you want to find out from me and Casper, we will answer. And of course, all your MMA questions, send them through to us. How it's going to work is we're basically going to look through your questions, and on the opportunities with the shows where we have some time, we'll choose the best questions and we'll answer them. So send them through to us. If we don't have time on a certain episode to answer those questions, don't worry. They go in a little secret question vault, a Submission Radio question vault, and we look through those questions anyway and choose the best ones to go on the program. And as always, guys, the best way to reach us if you want to jump through social media is at Submission AUS on Twitter and Submission Radio AUS on Facebook. We've been getting a lot of messages from people. We've been getting a lot of tweets from people. We love talking to you guys. It is me and Casper who manage the accounts ourselves. No social media managers here at Submission Radio. We'll love to talk to you guys personally, so keep that going. We love hearing from you, but we have our first guest on the line, and Cass, I believe you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys. Our next guest is coming off a win over Diego Sanchez, and will be taking on Max Holloway at UFC 199 in a highly anticipated featherweight scrap. He is the bully himself, Ricardo Lamas. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going today?
It's going great, man. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's been almost 6 months since your last fight. Tell us, what has Ricardo Lamas been doing with himself? What have you been up to?
Spending a lot of time with the family. After the last fight, the holidays came around, so
I just enjoyed that with the family and my wife and son, and I was just hanging around waiting for a fight, and we finally booked one. So it's time to put in work.
What are some of the highlights? I mean, 6 months is a long time. Any particular memories that stand out with the family? Any trips you took or anything like that?
No trips, nothing. I think, I don't know, one of the best memories I had was just coming home right after my fight. You're coming off a win. You're kind of on that high. And it was maybe the day after Thanksgiving, me and my wife threw on some Christmas music and, I had hot lattes and we're putting up the Christmas tree with my son kind of there. It's the little memories like that I really like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, apart from that, we saw that you bought a parrot recently. How's parrot life, Ricardo? And is it as glamorous as Hollywood makes it out to be?
It's not. There's a lot more poop that's involved than I thought. But other than that, she's really cool, man. She's a Congo African gray. She hatched in December, so she's still real young, and she's just starting now to make all these funny noises and stuff, and I'm trying to get her to talk, and that might be a couple months before she starts talking, but I'm going to work on some impressions for her.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's going to be cool to come over, and people are going to know your whole repertoire and your whole vernacular when they basically hear your parrot. Talk to us about this poop situation. Any funny poop stories? Where's the most awkward moment you found some poop? You come home and be like, parrot, what are you doing?
Well, we basically have her on this perch that we had in our family room, and I don't know what. I mean, she's just like me. You wake up in the morning and you take that morning dump. So as soon as I put her on the perch, she takes this huge dump, and there's a little tray under the perch. It's basically a poop catcher.
Yeah.
But it hits and then splatters against the wall, and my wife went insane. And I was, like, get that damn bird out of here! It's disgusting. And I had to run and clean it all up. So that's probably the grossest one I could tell so far.
Wow.
Well, from our records, and the spies have alerted us that you have a dog and a lizard as well. What are we going for here, Ricardo? Is there going to be a little mini zoo opening up in the house soon?
That's just what I brought with me to training camp. I brought one of my dogs, I brought the parrot, and I brought one of our chameleons. So my wife is at home with another one of our dogs and another chameleon. So, we're working on putting together a little zoo. We're going to start charging admission for people to come in.
Wow, it'll be like the traveling llamas circus. So you saying you bring the parrot, the dog, and the chameleon to training with you as well?
Yeah, I did. Well, I had to bring the parrot because my wife is afraid of her. And these parrots, they're kind of one-person birds, so they'll mainly attach themselves to one person. And I'm the one that's been handling her since we got her, so she's kind of attached to me now. So I wasn't going to leave her at home with my wife because she's too scared to even bring her out of the cage. So I brought her, and my first bull terrier, Chico, he's my right-hand man, so he had to come down with me. He's made plenty of trips down to Miami with me for training camps. And then one of the chameleons came with too. He's got a little bit of a calcium deficiency right now, so I brought him over, and hopefully the Florida sun will cure him of that.
No, very nice. What's the chameleon's name?
Larry.
Oh, Larry. That's a great name for a chameleon. I love it. You know what? I love listening to people's names for their pets because it's just such a cute experience. One final question about the zoo. What are we looking at next? You got a dog, you got dogs, you got lizards, you got a parrot. What's on the radar next?
Man, I don't know. We might have to calm down for a little bit, but my wife wants a French bulldog. I want another lizard, a frilled dragon.
Wow.
You saw the original Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah.
Original one?
Velociraptor,
okay,
that's what you're going for?
No, not a Velociraptor. It's called a frilled dragon. And basically, you remember the character that Newman from Seinfeld played in Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the dinosaur that killed him in the car, the one that has that big thing that kind of fluffs out around its neck.
Uh-huh. So you're very ambitious, Ricardo.
The lizard that looks just like that.
How's the wife going to react to that? I mean, poop on the wall is one thing, but like a spitting dragon,
she'll kick my ass if I come home with another animal. She'll kick my ass. But
you just keep it at
I
training.
bet if it's a French bulldog, she'll love it.
Yeah.
I just feel like the parrot needs to be a part of your walkout for fights.
Yes.
Does Reebok have a thing against parrots? Can they just brand them with the Reebok logo? Will that make it okay?
Maybe I'll get a little Reebok sweater to put on her.
Imagine that.
That's hilarious. You and your fight, the parrot flies over, just takes a big dump in the octagon. It's all fun and oh man, that'd be hilarious. All right, let's talk about your fight. Your last fight saw you beat a legend in Diego Sanchez. Great fight, but not really one that moved you up the ladder. Now you're fighting Max Holloway, ranked number 4, a guy that seems very close to title contention. How happy are you with the matchup?
I'm very happy. It's the fight that we asked for. I absolutely wanted to fight somebody that was ranked above me to move me up, and with Aldo and Edgar being matched up, and me pretty much just coming off a fight with Mendez about a year ago, I didn't think they'd give me the rematch yet. So we asked for Holloway, and they let me have him. So I think it's going to be a great fight. He's a tough kid. He's up and coming, but I've heard him saying that I've had my time, but this bull still has plenty more rodeos left in him.
And UFC 199 is a great card, and you're third from the top. But just a month later, the UFC returns to Chicago for UFC on Fox 20. Is a part of you bummed out that you don't get to fight in front of your hometown?
Yeah, definitely. The perfect situation would have been getting the fight with Max and getting it in Chicago, but Max didn't want to wait that long. So he wanted to go in June, preferably on 199. So, that if I wanted to fight him, it'd have to be now. So we accepted it.
Yeah, of course. And look at Max, he's on an 8-fight win streak, and his last 3 wins have come against Cub Swanson, Charles Oliveira, and Jeremy Stevens. Are you impressed by the streak and him in general?
Yeah, he's a great fighter. He's real good. I'm definitely impressed at the way he's been performing. But I love to play the spoiler. I've been doing it pretty much all my UFC career. Cub Swanson was a big prospect coming into the UFC from the WEC, and I finished him. Then they threw another top guy, Hatsu Hioki, who was, a legend in Japan, Sengoku champion. He was going to be the next one to step up and fight Aldo, they were all saying, and I beat him. And then, Eric Koch, this young kid, like protege of Anthony Pettis, he was supposed to fight Aldo, and I finished him. And then Bermudez coming off a 7-fight win streak. He was looking to make it 8. I finished him inside of 1 round. So I don't pay attention to people's accolades and what they've done. When they step in the ring with me, it's a completely different thing.
Well, speaking of spoilers, Max has beaten his recent opponents with a ton of lateral footwork, angles, and cardio. But what is the key, do you think, to beating him?
I don't think he's ever faced somebody like me. I think that the closest kind of person that he has faced who's similar to me because he's a wrestler and is Dennis Bermudez, and that's a fight that he lost. And, I think it's going to go the same way, man. I mean, I think my wrestling is too strong, and I'm not someone that just takes you down and sits on top of you. When I take you down, I'm punishing you. And when we're on the feet, I'm punishing you. You could see that in my last fight with Diego. They had to wheel him out in a wheelchair backstage after the fight. But, I go in there to fight, man. That's it.
And it's interesting because we the way we've been looking at this matchup, it's exactly the same thing. He hasn't fought a strong wrestler in a long time, and yeah, you're right, Dennis Bermudez was the last guy. But what about the actual stand-up itself? Do you feel like you have the tools to beat him on the feet as well?
Of course. I'm sparring every day with some of the best guys in the world. My main sparring partner, Luis Palomino, he fights in WSOF. Mm-hmm. Talk about hand speed, angles, kicks. This guy has everything. And I'm constantly mixing it up with him every single day. So having somebody taking angles and speed, it's not going to bother me because I'm used to it. It's what I've been training with every single day out here.
Well, when you look at the division, there's only 4 guys ahead of you and Max. 2 of them are fighting for the interim title belt, Aldo and Edgar, and one of them is the champion, McGregor. Do you feel like this fight between you and Max is a pretty clear title eliminator?
Definitely. I think that with a win over Max, it should put me next in line for, the winner of Aldo Edgar after they unify the belt with McGregor. I think I should be next after that with a win over Max Holloway for sure.
And speaking of the title picture, a lot has been made of the fact that Aldo and Edgar are fighting for interim belt, even though, the actual champion was originally supposed to fight on the same card. What's your take? Is an interim featherweight belt necessary?
I think so, man. They made an interim belt when Aldo was away. He wasn't even away for that long. And they had the interim championship between Chad and McGregor. So we don't even know when McGregor's coming back. He still got I believe he's set up again to fight Nate Diaz. Who knows what's going to happen in that fight and how long he's going to be out after that fight. So I think an interim belt is definitely necessary.
It's interesting because the UFC have said that McGregor will return to fight to featherweight and fight the winner of Aldo and Edgar, but who really knows if that's the truth, because the Nate Diaz fight would make a lot of money. Let me ask you something. With Aldo and Edgar being for the interim title, does a part of you feel like you and Max are the backup plan in case McGregor doesn't return to the division and the UFC needs a featherweight title challenger?
For sure. If Aldo and Edgar fight for the interim belt, I think the winner of me and Holloway should fight the winner of that fight for the interim belt again until McGregor comes back.
I mean, assuming you beat Max, there's really nobody else for you to fight in between a title shot and the featherweight title. It doesn't look like it'll be defended until, say, UFC 201 or afterwards. Is it safe to say that you'll be sitting out and waiting for the next shot after this fight?
No, I think it depends on a lot of things, on what the UFC does with the division, but I don't want to sit out, like I did before. I sat out for, almost a whole year to wait for my first title shot, and I don't want to do something like that again. I want to stay busy and, just keep building on my momentum.
It's an interesting situation because I'm just wondering, have you considered the possibility of McGregor potentially defending his belt, then taking a fight at a different weight class, forcing you to wait even longer, or to take even more fights in the meantime? Has that sort of crossed your mind?
Yeah, definitely. And, if that happens, I'm not going to sit around and wait. I'm going to stay active and I'm going to keep fighting.
Have you thought, I mean, obviously Holloway is the one you're focusing on now, but if you are going to stay active and keep fighting, have you thought of who the possibilities are? Because there really aren't that many. I mean, unless you have a rematch with Chad Mendes, it's either really Edgar, Aldo, or McGregor up there, unless you take someone who's ranked below you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a possibility, and I've had to do that in the past before also, take somebody ranked below me plenty of times. But it's just part of the sport, If we're not fighting, we're not making money. So we got to get in there and we got to fight. We have to make our money. And if I have to take a fight with someone ranked below me, I will. But I'm always going to try and take the best possible fight for my career.
Well, originally, when McGregor won the featherweight title and wanted to move up weight classes, the idea behind it was that he would still be going back to featherweight regularly, so you guys could keep moving along in your division. And now there's talk of him possibly fighting Nate Diaz. He was going to fight RDA. He was going to move up to lightweight, welterweight. Do you think in a lot of ways, it must be pretty frustrating for the division, but do you think in a lot of ways it didn't really quite work out the way it was promised to be?
Definitely, but that's just the way the sport goes. There are things that happen all the time in this sport. Sometimes guys get injured. Sometimes, stuff like this with the whole McGregor situation happens. He got pulled off the card. So the sport is very unpredictable. You can't say, okay, this is what's going to happen, and then after this fight, this is going to happen. You just have to wait and see how everything plays out, and then adjust accordingly. Yeah,
you mentioned it. That was a crazy situation, seeing McGregor be pulled off UFC 200. I don't think anybody saw that coming. What was your take on it? Obviously, he wanted to not do certain media obligations in favor of training, and then the UFC pulled him. What did you make of that situation?
That's part of the job, man. I mean, I've never been able to get out of any media obligations, and I know that he's had a lot more put on him, but they're paying him the money to do it. So, he needs to get his ass in there and do this stuff. He's got to promote the events just like everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, you've main evented before. Have you ever had a point in your career where you felt like the media duties got in the way of and affected your training?
No, not really. I mean, the biggest media obligations I had were probably when I fought Aldo, and it was during fight week. It was, Super Bowl week also. And there was a couple nights where I couldn't even get time in to train. But luckily I had prepared before that going into it. My weight was great, and it didn't affect me.
I'm wondering, do you think that if you sort of reached this level where, you became the champion and respectfully, your media duties were considerably raised, you had to do things like world tours and travel internationally and those kinds of things to, do, a few press conferences. Do you think those things would start to affect your training, or do you think you would be able to, make the necessary adjustments?
I would definitely make the necessary adjustments. Listen, man, we're all in this to be champions. We're all in this for the UFC to, hype us up as much as they can. The more exposure we get, the better it is for our career. That guy is making money hand over fist. he's got nothing to complain about.
Yeah, no, so, and if you did do the world tours, I'd fully expect you to bring the parrot and the lizards with you because there's only one way to get around that. Now, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this interim title fight, UFC 200. I mean, Edgar versus Aldo, it's a rematch. A lot of people trying to figure out if we're going to see the same Aldo as before, or if Frankie Edgar is going to beat him this time. What are you looking at this matchup like? Who do you think is going to walk out as the winner?
Man, I'm looking at this just like all the other fans are. I can't call it either. A lot of it depends on how Aldo mentally deals with that first loss in over 10 years. And, Frankie Edgar has been looking great. In his last fight, he KO'd Chad Mendes in the first round. And you can tell that Frankie's game is still improving every time. So, I mean, if the old Aldo comes back, I don't know, man. But Edgar, I could always see him taking the fight also. That guy is tough as nails, and, he just keeps coming the whole time.
Before he fought McGregor at UFC 194, there was a great article in MMA Fighting by Sean El-Shadi about Jose Aldo's past opponents, describing how dangerous he was and how much they revered him. You were a part of that article, as were many other fighters, and it seems like, many greats in MMA, his aura of invincibility was broken, at least for now. I'm just wondering, it's hard to gauge, but how much do you think a devastating loss like that affects his confidence, especially first one in 10 years, and do you think in general he'll be the same fighter when he returns?
I don't know, man. Every individual is different. But I could see Aldo. He's one of these guys that came from nothing and built himself up into a great champion. And this could have lit that fire that he needed. This could have lit that fire underneath him, and maybe we'll see him come back even more vicious. Like when he first arrived on the scene in the WEC. So we just have to sit and wait and see who shows up to that fight in July.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting fight. And we know that Holloway is your current focus, but out of the 3 title fight possibilities, Edgar, Aldo, and McGregor, which one would you say excites you the most?
For a possible matchup with myself?
Yeah.
All 3, man. But, I'd love the chance to punch McGregor in his mouth, so probably McGregor would excite me the most.
It's the answer we expected. All right, we're running out of time, Ricardo. We're having a lot of fun. Before we let you go, we've just we basically told everybody that you're coming on the show, and the fans sent in their fan questions. So we're going to try and we're going to try and ask you 1 or 2 before we let you go. Dartfeld, he has a couple of questions, so I'll put them together. His questions are: many are counting you out against the younger surging Holloway and talking past this fight as far as what Holloway will do while the Edgar Aldo Conor Diaz situation works itself out. Does it motivate you even more to go out and stamp your own name in the title scene? And his follow-up is: considering your wins over Cub Swanson, Hatsuhaoki, Eric Koch, Dennis Bermudez, Hakron Diaz, and the fact that your only loss came to Aldo and Chad Mendes, do you feel like you get the respect you deserve in the division?
To answer the first part of the question, it definitely motivates me when I hear somebody talking about, I've heard Max say, I want to fight in June because I want to stay ready in case somebody gets hurt on the July card. That's looking past me, and that's not giving me the respect I deserve. So he better not be looking past me because that's going to be a huge mistake on his part. And what was the second part of the question? As
far as the respect you get in the division, Dartfeld compared you to Rodney Dangerfield, saying you don't get the respect that you deserve. The only losses come to Chad Mendes and Aldo, and you've beaten a lot of tough guys. Do you feel like you get the respect you deserve?
No, I don't. I think I've done a lot in this division, beaten a lot of guys and finished a lot of guys, and I don't think I get the respect I deserve, but I don't give a shit. I'm going to keep kicking the shit out of people until I do get that respect.
We'll do one more fan question. We'll let you go because we know how busy you are. Leonhard Iula wants to know, do you ever go on forums like Sherdog or The Underground and read what people say where you discover that people are really mean and will say whatever they want, post any kind of pictures and say anything? And does it have any effect on you? And he wanted me to remind you of the Rashad face meme, for instance, when he got knocked out by Lyoto Machida, how the internet went crazy and basically created a whole bunch of variations on Photoshop. He just wants me to ask you, what's your view on all that?
I have not gone on Sherdog or any of those to read comments or anything, but, I've gotten my fair share of hate tweets and stuff like that. And in the beginning, I'd get kind of mad and I'd start like talking shit back to these people. And
were you under your name? Did you have like another account where you're like, well, actually, I think Ricardo Lamas is a pretty handsome guy?
right. I totally disagree. Yeah, I totally do something like that. No, I mean, I've seen some of the hate that some of these fighters get, man. You know, Ronda Rousey after her loss, that was brutal what the internet did to her. You know, and it's part of the game, man. We got all these sofa warriors, keyboard warriors that sit in their mom's basement and talk shit to professional fighters and they wouldn't say one word of that to our face in real life because they know they get the teeth slapped out of their mouth. But, you know, I just laugh at people like that.
Yeah, it's the best way to go about it. The internet's brutal, and you gotta take it in stride. Finally, the most important question, Ricardo, before we let you go, give us the official prediction. When you picture yourself beating Max Holloway, how do you see it happening? How are you winning at UFC 199?
I think I see a submission coming.
Ooh, there you go. We'll be interested to see what happens there, guys. Don't forget to catch Ricardo Lamas on Twitter at Ricardo Lamas MMA and catch him fighting Max Holloway at UFC 199 June 4th, 5th here in Australia because we're a day later. Ricardo, thank you so much. Please look after Larry. Good luck with the zoo and good luck with the fight UFC 199.
Now, thank you guys. I just want to say that I really appreciate all my Australian fans out there.
Holy shit.
You guys are like really fucking good. Like it's a real pleasure to talk to you guys and have me on again.
Oh my God, I thought that was my neighbor on the phone. That was one of the best Australian accents I've heard. That's hilarious. That is, yeah.
I watch a lot of Summer Heights High. You guys get that down there, right?
Well,
No
you know,
way.
fun fact, Ricardo, Summer Heights High was actually filmed at our high school. And it actually had
No shit.
a lot of our actual teachers and students in it. It was an interesting experience. We didn't make it, but yeah, we know the show very well.
But Jonah was not a classmate.
Yeah, me and my wife. That's like one of our favorite shows to watch. Summer Heights High and the Angry Boys. That dude is funny as hell.
What do you watch it on? Netflix?
No, they had it on. They had it on like HBO over here.
Oh
That was
wow!
the first time I saw it on HBO, and then they had Angry Boys on HBO also.
Wow, we didn't realize it made it that big internationally, but yeah, that's awesome to hear, and that's awesome to hear that that you love that show. Anyway, we'll let you go, man. We'll get out of your hair, but pleasure chatting to you as always. We'll do it again soon.
You too. Talk to you guys soon.
Hey guys, this is Brian Stan. You're listening to Submission Radio.
Our next guest is coming off his most impressive win in his MMA career when he TK'd former champion Johnny Hendricks in the first round. He now returns to the program ahead of headlining UFC Fight Night 89 against Rory MacDonald. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Thanks, my friend. Glad to be on with you guys again.
Yeah, it's always good when you come on. Now, how about this? You're headlining your third show in a row. For those that don't know, obviously you were the main event for Tough ATT versus Black Zillions, and obviously your last fight with Hendricks at UFC Fight Night 82, and now this. That's a pretty big feather in the old cap. Tell us, how's that feel?
Man, it feels great. I'm just excited that the UFC and the fans, are knowing that I can, pull off an exciting show and headlining these things. It definitely gives me two thumbs up and makes me feel great, man, to be honest with you. Just going out there and just trying to put on a show for the fans and for the UFC, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, well, they say headlining a show in the main event brings a lot of pressure, but you headlining fights have seen you finish your opponents in the first round. Does it have sort of like a reverse effect on you where you see it as an opportunity to show off what you can do?
Oh, definitely. Being the main event, it does put a little bit more pressure on you. But, that added pressure definitely brings the best out of me. So whenever I step out there, I know I'm in the main event. People are expected to see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson put on a show and, see something flashy. And that's just my style. So that added pressure, it definitely brings the best out of me. And for some reason, man, I prepare myself for a 5-minute round war. Just let the knockout happen. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The past two fights, it just ended up happening.
Yeah, much to the happiness of everybody watching. Now, before we get into the fight and the state of the welterweight division and a bunch of things, we want to talk about Stephen Thompson, the man. We noticed on Instagram you're wearing Dragon Ball Z Rashis at training, and we were a little surprised that you were actually wearing a Piccolo Rashi rather than, the more popular and fitting Goku one. Explain this key, crucial decision.
Well, everybody wants to be the main character, and it's just kind of, everybody expects somebody wearing the Goku. But sometimes I don't like the main guy. I like the underdog, the guy who maybe not as powerful, but has got a great character. Piccolo's one of my favorites, man, to be honest with you. He's been there since the regular Dragon Ball episodes and Dragon Ball Z. So, yeah, man, I like Piccolo. I like Trunks. Obviously, Vegeta's got an awesome character. But, yeah, man, that's just I like to go for that. And just the fact that Piccolo's probably out of the bunch, he's a strategist. You know what I mean? He's a thinker. So he thinks before he steps out there and duels anybody. And I like that about Piccolo.
Well, Stephen, since we're on the topic of Dragon Ball Z, we're going to read out a number of UFC fighters' names, and we want you to compare them to a Dragon Ball Z character, okay? So we'll read out a bunch of names, and you know what? If there's a couple of characters that stand out to you, that's okay too, okay? So we'll kick it off with Robbie Lawler. Who does he remind you of from Dragon Ball Z?
Robbie Lawler, he reminds me of Brawley. I mean, big shoulders, big arms, kind of stands there and takes punishment. If you're familiar with Brawley, he takes punches, man, because he's just that powerful, Definitely Brawley for him.
All right, what about Tyron Woodley? Who does he remind you of?
Tyron Woodley, kind of a shorter fighter. I would say Oob. I don't know if you're familiar with Dragon Ball GT. He's the reincarnation of Majin Buu. You know what I mean? And, yeah, that's who he reminds me of, man, Oob.
What about the man of the hour at the moment? Everybody's talking about him, Conor McGregor. Who does he remind you of?
Oh, that's a hard one, man. Conor McGregor, he doesn't look like too much, but I would say Vegeta.
Okay.
Definitely Vegeta, man. He's when he goes out there to fight, he uses a lot of emotion and tries to get his opponents to get emotional, and that's how he beats them. And he's just a tough guy. You know what I mean? When I see him, I see Vegeta.
I was actually out the other night at a place in Melbourne, and there was a guy with a margin tattoo on the back of his neck. So how about that? Finally.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Rory MacDonald. Who does he remind you of in the Dragon Ball Z saga or universe?
Oh man, Rory MacDonald. He is definitely those guys from TriStar are strategists. And they are thinkers. They're not just going out there just winging things, just expecting to throw a punch. They're thinkers. So really, I would see him as Piccolo.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, he is definitely a strategist. Uses his jab. He never looks like he's overwhelmed. He's always keeping his cool, and that's the way Piccolo goes out there and fights. He's always keeping his cool.
Well, that's interesting. Now, let's talk about your fight. When we spoke last time, you wanted the next title shot. However, you ended up getting matched up with your friend Rory MacDonald instead, and Tyron Woodley ended up getting the shot. Just want to know, Stephen, what was your reaction to getting Rory as your next opponent as opposed to getting the next title shot?
I was a little disappointed that I didn't get the title shot just because, I finished the former welterweight champion and a guy that went 5 rounds with George St. Pierre, which was controversial, 10 rounds with the champion now. And even though Robbie won the last one, it was still controversial. So I see it as me beating the welterweight champion. And the fact that Rory just fought him for the title in July. So it's almost like they're giving him a second shot, at the title. But yeah, man, sometimes that happens. You got obstacles that are going to get in your way, and you got to just mow through it. He is the number 1. I'm the number 2. So I want to be that number 1 spot. I want that. And it's a dangerous guy to do that, I was wanting the title shot, but he is definitely a dangerous guy to be stepping in the octagon with, which is why he's the number 1 contender. But, we're buds, and we're going to be friends before and after the fight.
We'll talk about your friendship in a moment, but just once that fight was set, you and Rory MacDonald, it was a big question of who's going to get the next title shot. And there were some who thought that maybe Nate Diaz should have gotten it, just against Lawler to capitalize on his popularity. And then in comes Tyron Woodley. Do you think that Woodley is the right man for that title shot? Do you think he deserves that next title shot?
I definitely think he is at the level to be fighting for the title shot, yes. Well, the UFC, to be honest with you, the UFC did tell Tyron he would get the next shot. And I guess for anybody has been told that, hey, UFC promised me the next shot. They're going to wait until he fights for the title. So yeah, man, I think it's cool that Tyron's going out there, going to be fighting for it. We'll see what happens. And I don't like to look past anybody. So hopefully after this fight, we'll be fighting whoever wins that fight, hopefully in November in Madison Square Garden.
I guess the interesting thing in the whole situation is Woodley's last win was over Kevin Gastelum way back in January of 2015. The fight that was supposed to give him a title shot was against Johnny Hendricks. That fight obviously didn't happen, but you did fight Johnny and destroyed him in the first round. So in a lot of ways, does it sort of blur your mind a little bit that he's fighting for the belt and you're sort of fighting Rory MacDonald instead?
Yeah, man. I mean, to be honest with you, yes. It's kind of upsetting that it's happening this way, but I'm a fighter. That's what I do, and I'm here to fight the best. And like I said before, I'm the number 2 and he's the number 1. So I guess I gotta show the UFC one more time that I deserve that title shot. So, it's going to be happening June 18th, and whatever happens there, and whatever happens during the Tyron and Robbie Lawler fight, it is what it is, brother. I'll be ready for whoever I'm stepping in the octagon with, but a little disappointed at the same time.
I feel like that's a very Piccolo thing to say, no complaining, just kind of dealing with what's in front of you. I mean, now that you're fighting, obviously, Rory MacDonald, a former training partner, a guy that you know pretty well, is it difficult for you to prepare for that fight, having that friendship there?
At first, I was kind of disappointed that I was fighting him because we do have, we got a relationship. We've known each other for years. The days before I was even fighting MMA, I was going up training at TriStar with George St. Pierre, and I was, specifically up there for him. But me and Rory would be in the same classes together, so we could drill with each other. Never really sparred, but we developed a relationship. So whenever we see each other at the fights, when I would go back to TriStar, we would hang out. We would talk and chit chat. But when you get up to the level we are now, it's bound to happen. You're going to be fighting that guy that you've trained with. You saw this past weekend, I believe, Overeem trained with Orlovsky, but they went out there and they duked it out, man. And that's what's going to happen. We know it's business, and we're just going to be friends that are going to be punching each other in the face June 18th.
Well, I guess it happens at the gym all the time. With Arlovsky and Overeem, you could tell that both guys didn't really like each other that much. Yeah. But I think this is a little bit different. And I guess the other thing that comes into play is you're an unpredictable guy and your movements are hard to get used to. Do you think it's a negative fighting a former training partner in the sense that he knows a lot of what you're capable of more than your previous opponents?
Not at all. I mean, at the time when I was up there, I was specifically up there for George, but I was just a kickboxer at the time. Uh-huh. And actually going up there training with those guys were the ones that kind of inspired me to actually switch over from kickboxing to mixed martial arts. So I found myself training, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, just to be a better sparring partner for George. And once I made that jump over, I kind of stopped going up there because I had to train specifically here with my coaches. So I haven't been up there in probably 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow.
But having that relationship and them knowing how I fight, I've made, and they know this, I've made leaps and bounds from when I was up there the first time. From up there training with those guys, but I know they're going to be really ready. They can just go at film and just pick it apart. I know how Faraz is. He's a thinker, man. He's definitely a brain, and can break fighters down. So I know they're back watching film, watching my last 3-4 fights. But it is very difficult for them to find sparring partners. But at the same time, they know what they're doing. I think they brought in Michael Page Venom, who fights for Bellator, who's a karate stylist. A few guys from Austria, I believe, are karate guys. But it's okay, man. We all have different. We're all different, So it's still going to be difficult for them to really, get ready for me.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Michael Venom Page is obviously making big waves in Bellator. How do you think he's going to go as far as emulating your style? And what do you think your biggest advantages will be over Rory? And, things that you'll obviously surprise him with?
He's going to try and simulate the best way he can. He doesn't throw a lot of kicks. If you ever watch him fight, he's really good with a pulling right hand. He's very fast with explosive with his hands. But they're one-shot techniques. So it's going to be hard for him to break that style to kind of simulate me. I throw a lot more kicks than he does and different angles than he does. So, it's just kind of that's what makes this sport exciting. I don't know what Rory's going to come with. I know he's got a good jab. He keeps his left side forward, likes to throw the back leg roundhouse. So just about anybody else that I prepare for, I look for him to shoot for my legs, to get me to the ground, just like everybody else. So I got to prepare myself for that.
Well, McDonald's last fight was a brutal one with Lawler that legitimately made him look like Voldemort from the Harry Potter movies near the end of it. But in all seriousness, he took a lot of damage to his head. How much of an effect do you think that had on him? And what do you think about some fans saying he may never be the same fighter again after that outing?
That's just something we'll have to see. I remember after my loss, and I took a beating fighting Matt Brown, I grew tremendously after that. And I am preparing for the same Rory MacDonald. The Rory MacDonald who lost is going to come back 10 times better. And that's how I have to look at it. If I look at it as if he may not come back the same, I'm not going to train as hard as I can. I feel that I may not prepare myself like I should. So at right now, I don't like to think about as if, he may not be the same fighter. I don't know. Especially his nose. Is his nose going to be the same if he gets kicked or punched in it? I don't know. But what I do know is that Rory MacDonald is a great fighter. And I know from my experiences, after losing a fight, I came back stronger. And I feel that Rory's going to do the same.
Do you think he'll target the nose? Is that going to be something on your radar?
Oh, you know what? Yep. It's either the nose or the jaw. And there's a real sweet spot that I like to aim for as well, which is directly on the ear. I don't know if you've seen some MMA fights where guys get grazed on the ear. For example, Conor McGregor and Poirier. Dustin Poirier. I mean, he's got grazed right on that ear, that sweet spot. So, yes, I'm trying to be very specific with my punches. The nose is definitely a big target.
We know that you were a lot more vocal after your last fight, but, if you do beat Rory MacDonald, are you planning to call out the winner of Lawler Woodley just to make sure you don't miss out on another title shot to Carlos Condit or, say, Nick Diaz, who are, other guys who are waiting in the wings?
Definitely. I mean, after, I just beat the number 2 guy, former welterweight champion. When I beat the number 1 guy, they have to give it to me. I'm definitely going to go out there, put my foot down and say, listen, guys, I deserve the title shot. Give it to me.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, speaking of Carlos and Nick, does it legitimately worry you that even though you may win, there's a good chance Nick Diaz might get the title shot and return to the UFC because of the money he draws and because he previously beat Lawler in brutal fashion?
You know what? It is a possibility. I mean, which is, makes the UFC exciting because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's up Dana White's sleeve and what he's going to do next. But I'm looking at all possibilities. It could happen, man. So you just got to be prepared for it, pretty much. I mean, when you fight for the UFC, it's just like, it's just really waiting. When they give you a name, that's what you got to be ready for.
So I'm just curious because, I mean, you're a really nice guy and you're super positive, but if it did turn out that you had to fight another time after beating Rory MacDonald, who's the number 1 contender and already beating Johnny Hendricks, or even twice more, would that bother you? How much would that bother you?
Definitely, man. That would be really disappointing. I mean, if they don't give me the title shot, something's wrong. That's just not right, I believe. I'll definitely be making some noise. Or try to at least. I'm not really, people really don't take me serious because I am a nice guy. But, something's got to be wrong if they don't give it to me after this.
I mean, I guess another way around Diaz getting a title shot over you, and again, everybody's been talking about you getting that title shot for a long time, but then again, we saw what happened with Miesha Tate. If, for whatever reason, you don't, another way of sort of, stopping Nick Diaz from getting that title shot is if you're the guy who versus him. A lot of people want to see that rematch with him and Condit, but, the fight's already happened. Would you like to test yourself against Diaz? And if it did happen, how would you see that fight playing out?
Oh, definitely, man. Diaz is he's a monster, man. He's not the most explosive guy out there, but he's crafty everywhere. He's got great jiu-jitsu, and him and his brother have, a really weird style of striking. It's a boxing style, but they take a lot of punishment. It's almost like they break your will with their face. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, you watch Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor. How many times did Conor just smoke him in the head? And with those punches, he's put away numerous guys with those strikes. And Nate just kept on coming and taking those shots. You could see just the energy just drain out of Conor. And, I mean, punching somebody with all you got and them just keep on coming, that's demoralizing, to be honest with you. That's like, you start breaking people mentally and emotionally that way. And that's how those guys are, and they're good at that. They're good at luring people into their game.
And we know that your management was lobbying for that title shot after you beat Hendricks, but just wondering, and just to confirm, has the UFC said anything to you or your management that if you beat Rory, you may get the next title shot, or is it still all up in the air?
Right now, it's still kind of up in the air, and I think not just me, but my management company are going to put their foot down if it doesn't happen. But I think the UFC, I had to give them the benefit of the doubt. I expect them to do the right thing.
And just when you say put their foot down, how do you see that happening?
To be honest with you, I've never been in that situation before, or not really know of anybody that I could talk to that have been in that situation. But my management company is awesome. Paradigm Management. They do manage Conor McGregor. They do manage Chris Weidman and a bunch of other really high-level fighters, people who have been up at the top of the game. So I think they have their ways to actually maybe put some heat on and let the UFC know what we want.
Well, Stephen, your division is crazy at the moment. On top of all the potential fights that can happen in the division, Nate Diaz and McGregor, as everybody knows, were supposed to square off at welterweight at UFC 200. That fight fell apart in spectacular fashion. What did you think about what transpired between McGregor and the UFC? Do you think McGregor handled the situation the right way?
I don't have the inside scoop on what exactly happened. I did hear that, he was asking for, and this is just stuff I've seen on social media, maybe he wanted a little bit too much what the UFC was going to give him. I'm not sure.
I mean, what transpired in the media was basically, and for what we know is he wanted to reduce the media schedule because they want to do the world tour. Yeah, and he's had a lot of media obligations that he's had to do previously with Tough and with the Aldo fight and with the RDA fight. He mentioned that it really affected his training, and he was actually in Europe and he couldn't afford to do the world tour and wanted a reduced media schedule. That's what we know as media, and that's what was in the news.
Well, to be honest, just from the media that I've been doing, and I'm not even on his level yet when it comes to popularity and, doing the traveling and having to do all those crazy media tours. Just doing what I'm doing, which is low level, it does wear and tear on you, man. And sometimes it takes away from your training. And I can't imagine what he's going through, But on the other side of that, him being who he is, it's kind of required. He does pretty much have an entire country behind him. He's one of the most popular guys in the UFC. So to help build the sport and build and seeing it go to that next level, he's kind of obligated to do that. You know what I mean? So it kind of goes both ways. I understand what the UFC is saying, and I know where he's coming from as well. So it's difficult, man.
I mean, I guess it's a bit of a funny question, but in a lot of ways, are you kind of happy that fight didn't end up going down? Because if Diaz had won or McGregor had beat him, then there was a very real chance that, there's two more guys in your division and they may even get the next title shot against Lawler.
Yeah, man, I really did. I wasn't really everybody likes to watch Conor McGregor fight because he's just a character and and very popular. But it was like, to me, one of the most ridiculous rematches. Why would they give him that? I mean, does it make sense? Why does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, it's not for a title, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it didn't really make sense. And a lot of people sort of looked at his performance against Nate Diaz and McGregor sort of gassing out a little bit. Looking at that fight, looking at that performance, do you think welterweight is the right place for him?
I really don't. They both weighed in, at the bottom of the weight class, very close, they were weighing as heavy as, I think, I wasn't there at his weight cut, but pretty much, I don't think they even had to cut weight. And they weighed 169 or something like that. It's just, and you got Robbie Lawler, who's a monster, probably walks around at 200, maybe over 200 pounds. And just somebody like that much bigger than you it's crazy. I wouldn't see him. It wouldn't be smart if I was his coach for him to go up to 170. Yeah, the people probably will want to see it, but you're thinking about your fighter. You're thinking about your sparring partner, the guy you've been training for years, and that's a good way to really get somebody hurt. You know?
I mean, obviously, it looks like he's going back to featherweight for the time being, and who knows if he'll ever end up coming to lightweight. But last time we had you on the show, we did speak about it because it seemed more like he was going to come to welterweight and potentially stay at welterweight. And you sort of, we talked about the fight with you and if the two of you fought, and you brought up the interesting things about, you know, your stance switching and things like that. Even though it looks like he's out of the division, is it still a fight that you'd be interested in? If the UFC said, hey, big money fight, you and Conor McGregor, why? Well, it wouldn't really make sense, but is it still a fight that you'd be interested in, especially considering the financial benefits?
Oh, definitely. And, you know, I think it would be. I mean, if I was, you know, when I become the welterweight champion, I would love to step in the octagon with Conor McGregor. He's a phenomenal martial artist, right? And I honor him for doing what he's doing with the sport. But like you said, it would be a big payday. It really would, and it would be a great payday for anybody who steps in the octagon with Conor McGregor. And I think you would be stupid if you thought otherwise. I think fighters, I think all the fighters would know that. You know, if somebody say, "Hey, you want to fight Conor McGregor?" Heck yeah, they'd all be jumping at it.
Well, Stephen, as we get to the end of the interview, we want to get a couple of predictions from you. And first, we have to find out, what do you think is going to happen in this fight between Robbie Lawler and Tyron Woodley? Who do you think will come out as champion in that one?
I see Robbie Lawler. You've had two great wrestlers face off against Robbie Lawler, and he just dominates, man. He's a very tough guy. He's very heavy on his feet, which makes it very difficult. And he's got heavy hips. When you saw, you know, Rory MacDonald shoot for those takedowns, and you've seen, you know, Rory MacDonald finish a lot of those. The majority of, if he's going to take you down, he's going to get you down. But if you watched it, Robbie stuffed every one of them, and just kind of broke him that way, which is why Rory MacDonald's, you know, kept it on his feet the last few rounds. I see it going that way. I think Tyrone's performance against Kevin Gastelum, it was kind of disappointing, and that was his last fight, I believe. Yeah. Was that his last fight, Kevin Gastelum?
Yeah, and January of last year.
It just really wasn't impressive, and some people thought it was controversial. You know, some people thought Gastelum won it. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think Robbie's got it.
I actually remember speaking on the show, and we actually said Gastelum won that fight as well, or it could have gone his way. So it's a crazy situation. But the most important and final prediction that we got to get from you is your one. Let's go back to Rory MacDonald. It's a big fight, lot on the line. Tell us, what's your prediction? How do you see this one going down? And how are you officially beating Rory MacDonald at UFC Fight Night 89?
Well, you know what? I'm going to be in the best shape of my life. So I know I'll be able to go hard for those 5-minute rounds. And that's what I'm preparing for. You know, keeping him away with my hands and feet. I know he's kind of one-dimensional when it comes to the striking. He keeps his left side forward. He loves to walk his way in, to throw his jab, and then once he sets down, he likes to throw combinations. Right after that combination, he shoots for the leg. So, you know, I'm going to be prepared for that, staying on my toes, working angles. He may come out with a different strategy, maybe just bum rush me to the cage or try and get me to the ground quick. That's the thing about those guys, about Rory. He evolves, man. He gets better, and he comes in with different tricks. So we're going to see what happens, man, and that's why I'm excited, just to see what what he's bringing to the table and how I'm going to react to that. But wherever the fight goes, I want to be prepared for it. If a knockout happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm going all 5-minute rounds, baby.
All right, guys. Well, how can you not be excited about that fight? Catch Stephen Thompson taking on Rory MacDonald at UFC Fight Night 89, June 18th, and follow Stephen on Twitter at Wonderboy MMA. Stephen, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure having you on the program.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
Hey, everybody. This is Tyron, the chosen one, Woodley. You are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, and next he has a former UFC bantamweight champion and the current #1 contender. He looks to bounce back at one of this year's biggest cards and take Rafael Sansa UFC 200. TJ Dillashaw, welcome back to the program. How's it going?
Doing good. Thanks for having me back on again.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on the program, TJ. Now, everybody knows your home is in Colorado when it comes to training, but we heard that you recently took a little bit of a field trip in a lot of ways and had a little bit of fun training in Canada just as a one-off. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did you end up going up to TriStar for a little bit and doing a bit of training?
I had some business to do up here. You know, I had some stuff to take care of with Everlast and doing a little bit of photo shoot, but took advantage of being up in Montreal and came by TriStar and got to do a practice taught by George, which is pretty cool, and then training with all the guys up here. It's been an amazing experience to to see how the famous gym at TriStar does things. We learned a lot up here.
Awesome. I mean, we saw the photo up on Twitter, and it was yourself, Sahabi, and then you had George sitting there with or standing there with jeans in a t-shirt. I'm just wondering, did you actually train with George, or what was his role there?
Yeah, George actually taught practice. He was on his way out. He was heading somewhere, so he got to change. We were hanging out and talking after practice, so it was just a quick little photo afterwards. But yeah, he actually taught the practice. So showing some secrets of his trade.
Ooh, some secrets. We like it. We like it. Now, obviously, because he was in jeans and t-shirt, there was no sparring, or did George pull off the, hey, I'm in the jeans and t-shirt look, but this is MMA, anything happens, so he just jumped in the ring anyway?
No, he was just dressed up going somewhere. He was, like I said, he was doing the top practice and showed some free technique and went over some things. So
free technique, okay. I'm just curious, how soon do you think before we see him back in the octagon while we're talking about George?
I have no idea. It all depends on how he feels. I think he's always training. The guy's always in shape. He's always looking like a brick house. He's always super built. But I think he's just kind of getting back after it and seeing how good he feels with how hard of training he is, and see if he could step in there. Who knows? I don't think he's planning on anything. I think he's just doing like a trial run. It is the way. I didn't really ask him, but that's just the way I was taking it.
I know that whenever I go and I meet MMA fighters and other people in the industry, I always sort of have a look if they're still looking the same as they once were. What did you think about some of the techniques he showed you? Is he still the GSP that everybody knew and loved, or did he look a little bit different?
Oh, he looks the same, man. He looks like he's in really good shape, as always. Looks on top of his game still. I mean, it doesn't look like he's been out of the gym much. Even though he's been retired, he looks like he's been in the gym nonstop. I'm sure the guy works out as much as I do still.
Yeah, he's always in tremendous shape. I'm just wondering, TJ, was there any point where he pulled you aside and said something along the lines of, hey TJ, I gotta tell you, I'm coming back to UFC 200. Don't tell anybody except Submission Radio. Anything like that? Was there a conversation loosely like that?
No, unfortunately, no dirty news for you guys. Nothing that we can break out on you guys' podcast, unfortunately. But if there was, you'd be the first to let know, obviously.
Of course.
Well, of course, you just heard the message from him, TJ. You can't not put it on Submission Radio first. And just quickly, last thing, George, do you think there's a possibility he might come down and train in Colorado? You guys have a great facility down there. Obviously, Muscle Farm are doing great things there. Any chance? Did they mention anything about possibly coming down and training with you over in Colorado?
George has actually trained there before it was even, as big as they now. He's trained a lot with my wrestling coach, Leister Bowling. He's a great wrestling coach, and anytime GFP was on his way through town, even if he had a layover in Denver, he would stop and go work out with my wrestling coach. So he's definitely not a stranger to the area, and my coach, Leister, has actually come to Montreal and worked out with them. They sent up a couple guys. Brendan Thatch came up here and worked out with Rory MacDonald. No, worked out with GSP, actually, I'm sorry, for one of his fights when he was getting ready. So definitely not a stranger of cross-training, and our camps definitely get along very well.
Okay, well, the dots are starting to connect. So now, the last time we spoke to you, TJ, you were very adamant that you deserved the title rematch over Uriah. He ended up getting the fight, and now you're facing Rafael Assunção. I'm just wondering, how do you feel about getting Rafael? And also, why did you take that fight?
Oh, it was a fight I wanted. Other than obviously the rematch. I felt Rafael's, he's on a good win streak. He hasn't fought in a while, and we had a controversial split decision 3 years ago. And so it's a fight that I'd like to prove that I was the better fighter when we fought, and still am. And it gets me. That's the fight that will get me right back into a title shot. I won't have to wait around. I'm not wasting time. I'm ready to have what I think is rightfully still mine, and so I want to get there as fast as possible. I think Rafael is the way to do it.
I'm just wondering, was there an option to sit out and wait for the winner of Cruz and Faber, and did you even consider that option?
No, I didn't even ask or consider it. When I wasn't fighting Cruz, it was just kind of, all right, what's next? I'm not going to sit around and wait for the guy, because who knows what happens. The only way I get paid is by fighting. I enjoy the fight, so I have that fighter's mentality that I want to be inside the octagon. So there was no point in me waiting around. I'll get back what's mine. I'm just gonna have to run through Rafael first.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't sound bummed out at all to be, not getting that title shot. Are you pretty happy also that not only did you get, a chance to avenge your loss to him, but also you ended up on the very stacked UFC 200 card?
Oh, trust me, I was very, very bummed. I was bummed for a long time. It's something you got to get over, though. I can't sit there and dwell on the past and what didn't happen and what's fair and what's not fair. Life's not fair. You gotta roll with the punches, and mine was that I didn't get the rematch. So I had to get my mind right and get ready for Rafael.
Well, we know you have a great camp, and obviously Rebecca, your wife, a great person as well. What was the biggest factor you think that helped you sort of get over the fact that you didn't get that rematch straight away and sort of move on from it so you could focus on this next fight?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything you just mentioned. My team, my coaches, Dwayne, Rebecca, just all kind of like, this is the path that I was meant to take. This was what was supposed to happen. So just roll with it. Just learn to enjoy life and not hold on to everything. Let go of the past a little bit and just enjoy the ride. I get to step in front of millions of people and fight and kind of show off a little bit, and so just learn to enjoy it.
Right, and your fights are an addition to an already stacked card. I'm wondering, do you know whereabouts your fight falls? Will you be on the main card or the prelims?
Shoot, man, I'm not really too worried about it. What I really wanted, I guess my first choice would be to fight a 5-round fight. I feel like that's in my favor. I like those big hyped up fights. I like those championship rounds. I feel like they've done well for me. That would be my first choice. But as soon as they offered me 200, I said it was a no-brainer. That's an epic card to be a part of. It'll be one that goes down in history. It's a stacked card, so I don't really care. I could be prelims, I could be main card. Whatever's going to hype up the card the most. If they need me to be the main event for a prelim, if they need me to be on Fight Pass, it's whatever. I don't really care. It's just a fight.
Yeah, and with that card, there's definitely no hard feelings wherever you do end up because there's so many great fights. Now, your last fight was the main event, and you had to do a lot of media with Dominic Cruz. Are you kind of relieved that with such a stacked card, you won't have that sort of pressure and distractions again? You can just fly under the radar and sort of focus on training more?
That is definitely a nice thing. I'm not going to have to worry about doing any media appearances or flying across the country to do stuff. I just get to train. I don't mind doing all the media, but it's going to be a nice change. My last 4 fights have been very highly media oriented, so it's going to be nice that it's just going to be worried about getting better.
You've always been great as far as media appearances and things like that go. There were times in the lead up to your last fight, especially when you were Dom and were placed in the same room, where you didn't seem like you really loved those media duties, and understandably so. I'm wondering if you can relate and what you thought of the recent situation with Conor McGregor not wanting to do as much media for UFC 200.
Well, shoot, there's no way I'm as busy as Conor McGregor, and it gets taxing after a while. Even on my schedule. So I can only imagine what they have him doing. He's a moneymaker. He's got to do a lot more than even I do, and it was a lot for me. So I can only imagine what he's got to do. And then because I really don't feel that's who Conor McGregor is behind the scenes. I've gotten to hang out with him at the Ultimate Fighter, and off camera he's a little bit easier going. Doesn't have to be so witty. Doesn't have to worry about being a fucking man all the time and worry about outwitting everyone. I'm sure that probably takes a toll of having to be someone that you're not naturally am. That's why I feel like it's easier for me as well to do those media things because I just act like myself.
No, it's certainly one of those situations where fans are a little bit disappointed the fight's not happening on UFC 200. After watching what transpired between Conor and the UFC, do you think the way him and his team handled it was the right way? Do you think there would have been a better way to handle it? Do you think he should have just accepted the media duties?
Sure, I don't even. So what? He didn't go on the card because he didn't want to go to media day, right?
Yeah. Well, the goss in the street is that basically he didn't want to do. He agreed to do a reduced media schedule where he was going to do a press conference, but what the media know, we don't know exactly what he said, but it seemed like he didn't want to do the world tours. And because he had done so much media previously, he did Tough, and he also had to do a lot of stuff for the RDA fight and the Jose Aldo fights. He felt like it really affected his training, and expressed the fact that he felt like he only just needed to do a reduced media schedule because people were already really excited for the fight just from the tweeting and the stuff that he did as well. And he just needed to focus on the fight. He was in Europe, in Iceland, doing his training camp, and thought it was vital for him to stay there and focus on his fight.
Well, I mean, you got to think about it, too. The guy lost, so that's a lot weighing on him as well. Not only all the stuff he's having to do, but he lost. He's been thinking he's invincible. He's been talking this smack and backing it up and predicting his fights and being unstoppable, and then he's getting proven that he's not all that, not all that he's been talking about. And I'm sure that's probably taxing as well. I'm sure he's having to go back and reevaluate his training and what he needs to do to stay on top. I mean, that's got to be pretty nerve-wracking, I imagine, for him, especially a confident guy, to go into a fight you just lost and having to do a bunch of stuff that's going to take away from your training, So, yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a smart choice to worry about getting better rather than talking.
Looking ahead to UFC 200, you're number 1, Rafael's number 5, and currently on an 8-fight win streak. This feels a lot like a title eliminator. Has the UFC or anyone confirmed this to you that, if you do beat Assunção, you're next in line?
Oh, it better be. I mean, I feel like I should already got that title shot. So that's the way I'm looking at it. I haven't ever confirmed it because that really doesn't really mean anything anyways. I mean, they can decide to do whatever they want when they want. I mean, that's the great thing for the UFC is that, they're their own promotion. But I sure hope so. I feel like I've already done enough to get my title shot, so I'll be Rafael and then be right back in there. I don't see who else they'd match him up with.
Well, in a couple of weeks, Thomas Almeida's fighting Cody Garbrandt, and Aljamain Sterling's taking on Brian Caraway on the same night. Do you have any concerns that one of those 4 guys may get the title shot before you?
No, I don't at all.
Just while on the topic of Cody Garbrandt, we got to ask you, he was actually on the show not long ago, and he didn't really take too kindly to you saying that he originally wanted to be part of Team Elevation. He said that when he was interested, he didn't realize it was a brand new team. I'm just wondering if you saw that, if you knew he felt so strongly about it.
Well, the reason why I know that he wanted to be part of Team Elevation is because I have long text messages with him and Leeser, my wrestling coach, about when I think Leeser met him in Canada at a UFC fight, and and at that point I had already made up my mind that I was going to go out there. I hadn't moved out there yet, but I had the conversation about it, and then I was going out there, and I already told Cody about it and told some of the guys about it, and so Cody's actually the one that approached Leeser, my wrestling coach, the main coach at a Elevation Fight Team, and told him he was interested in coming to Elevation Fight Team. And then there's this big long text message about Cody wanting to not have to worry about where he's going to train, and it'd be nice to have a place like Muscle Farm. He's just kind of making himself look as best as possible with media, and he's very easily influenced by Uriah and what he thinks. And so, he can say what he wants, but if he wants me to put out the proof, I can put it out there. If he wants to talk, he was the one talking about if he wanted to come to Muscle Farm. It wasn't like we approached him at all. Leeser didn't go to him. Leeser wasn't trying to recruit anybody. In the text message, it will clearly show that Cody Garbrandt came to Leeser Bowling and asked him about coming to Elevation Fight Team. But then all of a sudden, when it's a big stink in the media and a big stink inside of Uriah's head, Cody instantly switches his mind. He's a young kid. He's easily influenced. I like the guy. I've always got along with him. It's just stupid that he feels like he has to stick up for himself, instead of rather just doing what he wants.
Interesting.
But, on that note, Alpha Male has done a lot of big changes. So, I'm hoping it stays the way it is because they finally got the coach I feel like should have been the coach for a long time. Justin Buckles is a great head coach, and I believed in that guy for a long time. He just hasn't gotten the opportunity to be the head coach, and he's always been interested in being a fighter rather than a coach. And now I think he's finally taking on the role of being what he already was. He's a very good, influential coach, and so I'm interested to see how that's all going to go down. But I'm going off. On the end of Cody, he's just spitting bullshit lies to you guys, really.
Interesting. He also told us that he was going to approach you at the Arnold Expo, but chose not to. And the next time he sees you, the two of you will have words. I'm just wondering, TJ, have you seen him since, or have the two of you spoken at all?
No, I haven't. I don't know what What would we have words about? I don't understand that. I think I saw that. I've been off of social media quite a bit lately, but I think I saw something about him saying that. I don't really understand what he was talking about, that we have words. So I don't know if I said something to insult him or what.
I think basically he took issue with the fact that you mentioned that he wanted to be a part of Team Elevation. I think his side of the story was basically that he didn't know it was going to be a brand new team. And I guess he didn't really like that part.
Oh, well, he's just lying. I mean, I got proof. I mean, I really do. I mean, I really could. If he really wanted to put this out there as strong as he's going to, I'll just release some text messages that he's been sending to Lisa Bowling about how he wanted to come down from them. So it is what it is. I mean, it's whatever. You can't really worry about it too much, you know?
We are, of course. And we know we don't have too... Sorry, go on.
Oh, nothing. I was just saying he was young and trying to make a name for himself, you know?
We know we don't have too much time with you, TJ, so obviously we'll go back to your fight. Looking at Rafael, you know, he hasn't fought since October 2014 when he defeated Brian Caraway. Since then, you've had 5 fights, and obviously you won the belt. Do you think his time away from the cage will hurt him when the two of you fight?
I don't think it'll benefit him. I don't know. I mean, I'm expecting the best Rafael since coming into the cage, you know? I mean, Dominic Cruz had a long layoff, and he looked good coming back. You know, I still feel like I won that fight, and I came after him, but he looked good, and it wasn't like he missed a step, you know? So I gotta expect the best Rafael since possible, but I don't think it's in his favor to miss that much cage time, you know.
Well, he got the
split. It's not going to benefit you, if that answers your question.
Well, he got the split decision win over you last time you fought. What's the difference about this fight? What's going to be different about it? And why do you see yourself getting your hand raised this time around?
I think everyone's kind of seen how much I've grown as a fighter since that fight. You know? I feel like I was a completely different fighter back then, and I've grown leaps and bounds under Dwayne Ludwig and what he's done with me, how he transformed me into being a complete martial artist. You know, back then I was a little more of a wrestler, just looking for big shots, you know, throwing good combos, and I understand angles, and I've grown a lot, you know. I mean, I've only been doing this sport now for 6 years, you know, and I feel like I've learned a lot, and since I fought him 3 years ago, so that was half of my career ago.
Of course. And assuming all goes well at UFC 200 and you emerge victorious and get the next title shot, who do you think you'll be facing as the champion, Cruz or Uriah Faber?
I see Cruz winning that fight, you know, especially after been seeing his last performance against me and seeing Faber's last performances. I feel like, you know, I just feel that Cruz is going to win a decision. He's going to do what he always does. He's going to point fight. He's going to run around, and I don't think Uriah is athletic enough to get him, you know. I mean, Uriah caught some big shots on him the last time they met, you know, and dropped him a couple times. But I think that was more of Cruz being off balance. But I think Cruz comes out with a decision.
It will be a very, very interesting fight. And speaking of Uriah, he made some comments about yourself and Cruz, saying how you both look different since USADA came in, and also that he would smoke you if the two of you ever fought. What do you think of those comments, and do they give you any more motivation to fight him?
You know, Uriah's actually handled this whole entire thing so childishly. It's crazy how much I have to talk about the guy and how much he thinks he needs to talk about this. It's kind of mind-blowing, actually, because I would have never, ever seen this out of Uriah since the time I've known him. It's very childish. And, you know, at first with him talking all this crap, it was like, all right, so I see he doesn't want to be my friend anymore. Whatever. I don't need to be friends with Uriah. You know what I mean? He's always been for himself anyways. But now he wants to create an enemy. You know, for him to say things like that about me and Cruz that aren't true whatsoever, and to bash our names is pretty ridiculous. And I feel like Cruz made him look like a fool because of it. You know, I mean, he for the last couple of years, he hasn't been able to make himself relevant with his fights. The only way he's been able to do it is by talking crap about me. And so I think that's just what he's doing, is to try to talk crap about me and Cruz, because we're obviously better than he is, you know, and we have what he'll never have.
All right, TJ. Well, look, we really appreciate your time. And before we let you go and get your prediction, we have to change the subject and ask you about something very serious. Who is this man known as TJ Dillashaw? We hear he's been hunting. He looks a little bit like Rambo. Tell us, who is this person?
Yeah, man. I mean, I've grown up my entire life hunting. I mean, it's been a way of life for me. My dad was an avid hunter growing up. I grew up in a small town of Angels Camp, California, where, you know, the meat I ate was the meat I either raised or killed, you know, and I've just continued to live that way since I've grown up, and hunting is a hobby of mine, and especially archery hunting. I like it a lot. And Chad Mendez has started a guide service. It's a celebrity guide service where, you know, hunters can choose what hunt they want to be guided in and choose what celebrity they want to hunt with. And Chad's got anywhere from professional fighters like myself and Paige Van Zandt. He's got TV stars. He's got baseball players, football players, guys that like to hunt are joining his pro staff. And, yeah, it's a pretty cool little gig. Chad put together the hunt, and these guys get to come and hang out with us for a week or so and really learn who we are. When you're in a hunting camp, you really get to spend a lot more time with people and understand who they are. And it's a pretty cool little thing that Chad started up, and I'm hoping it continues to be successful because it's been a cool little gig. And I get to continue to hunt, so I love it.
I could just imagine Paige Van Zandt rocking up there and just starting to kill everything in sight and just impressing everybody around. Just quickly on that, TJ, I mean, look, a lot of great moments when you go hunting. As we finish this up, tell us a highlight from your trip. What stands out to you in your mind? Share us a little story. What's the best highlight that you've had so far on these hunting trips?
Oh man, I think the biggest highlight. I mean, it's not going to be something that's real interesting to people that don't understand hunting, but the biggest highlight in hunting, especially in bow hunting and the preparation that goes into it. I kind of feel like that hunting has a lot to do with fighting. You know, there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of game planning going on. Bow hunting, there's a lot of hard work. Like, you always have to be downwind from the animals because they can smell you. You got to make sure you're wearing the camo so they can't see you. You have to sneak within 40, 50, 60 yards to get a shot. You try sneaking into a deer within 40 yards and having that adrenaline going and your heart bumping and then having to make a good shot. You know what I mean? It's a challenging thing to do, and I think that's the best part is when you, even if you don't come out successful, it's just all the preparation that goes into it and the competition that goes behind bow hunting.
I love it. We've never been hunting, but the way you make it sounds 10 times more exciting than The Revenant. So we're going to have to go out and do some hunting.
Man, it's primal, man. It's super primal, man. It gets you, for one, you're outside. You're one with nature. You're doing something that's been done ever since mankind. And, you know, you get to eat what you're getting with your own bare hands. You know what I mean? This animal got to live a free, awesome life compared to something that's been pinned up and caged and pumped in full of hormones and treated the wrong way. So the gratification you get from just doing the whole process and how hard it is, I think it's an amazing thing. And if more people actually did it, there would be a lot less, you know, talking down on hunting. They'd understand it a lot more, especially with knowing what the work that goes in behind it.
I'm not surprised you're not, you know, doing much on social media, and you said you've gone off it. You're living the good life. You're out there in the wilderness and you're doing some hunting. Before we let you go, TJ, the official prediction: how are you beating Rafael Sansa at UFC 200?
Oh, I'm knocking him out. You know, I'm going to take advantage of some holes in his game, and I can even actually submit the guy. I mean, I almost did it the first time we fought. You know what I mean? So it's so cliche of me, but I'm going to finish him. So if it's going to be a knockout or a submission, that's definitely how I believe I'm going to do it. I'm going to wear him out, and I'm going to catch him. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm the more technical fighter. He's got some big holes in his game on his feet, and then I definitely feel like I'm the better scrambling grappler as well. So we'll have to show off maybe some of my wrestling this next fight.
Well, there you guys go. The latest addition to the already stacked UFC 200 card. TJ Dillashaw takes on Rafael Sansa on July 9th, July 10th in Australia. Don't forget to follow him on Twitter and Instagram at TJ Dillashaw. There you'll be able to see pictures of the famous TJ Killashaw. TJ, thanks so much for taking the time and chatting with us. We always appreciate it. Good luck in the fights. Have a great training session. And we will see you over in Vegas for UFC 200. So we look forward to catching up in person.
Awesome, man. I guess the last thing I want to say is that, you know, I got to thank Muscle Farm and Elevation Fight Team for everything they've done for me and giving me the opportunity to train as great as I possibly can. And right now, you know, Elevation Fight Team and Muscle Farm are having tryouts for the lighter weight guys. You know, anybody that's interested in continuing their professional fighting career, you send in, you know, who you are, and if you want to come out and come do a tryout, you know, we're accepting anyone from 45 to 25s and trying to get that room stacked up in there. You know what I mean? We got a lot of good guys already, but we got double the mat space recently, so we're looking to grow.
Hey.
So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. Go and look up Elevation Fight Team on Facebook and send in a message. Send us who you are, send us your record, your resume, and see if you can come and try out.
Well, there you go, guys. Double the mat space. If you want to come down and train at Muscle Farm, definitely do that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, right there is TJ Dillashaw. Can't wait to see him fight. But without further ado, guys, it's time to talk about a whole bunch of things. That finishes the interview segment of the episode. There's a lot to talk about, isn't there, Dennis?
Yeah, lots to talk about, lots of fights to go through. And just quickly, Bellator 154 happened this weekend, happened around the same time as UFC 198. And the big thing that came from that was Phil Davis earned the title shot with a decision win over King Mo. We won't be able to really discuss the fight today, but just wanted to let all the listeners know that's what's happening now in the world of Bellator. Very interested to see what's going to happen between Phil Davis and Liam McGeary. I personally think we'll probably see Phil Davis as the new Bellator champion soon.
I'm just going to say this. If you do want people to pay attention to that show, and Phil Davis versus King Mo, I mean, that's a pivotal fight for that division. Hugely pivotal. Why would you put it on at the same time as UFC 198? Obviously, the majority of MMA fans are going to be watching, the amazing show or the amazing lineup that was UFC 198.
Yeah, very, very strange scheduling there, and it's almost like perhaps a slip-up on Bellator's part. Either way, I agree with you. This was probably one of the biggest fights that they had sort of in the back pocket, and yeah, very, very strange. The day before would have been perfect, like they usually do it. It's a great way to kick off a really action-packed MMA weekend, but I don't know. Nevertheless, I think fans need to check it out. A lot of people saying this was a very exciting fight and went all the way. So an interesting one for people to check out if they didn't get a chance to watch it because of UFC 198.
Yeah, it's one that we'll be checking out after we actually finish doing this show. All right, UFC 198 time. There's a lot of fights to talk about, so let's get straight into it. Going a little bit earlier than normal, we're going to be talking about the prelim card, UFC Fight Pass. Little Nog defeated Pat Cummins. He finished him in the first round. Dennis, what was your take on this one?
Yeah, it was another one of those fights where Pat Cummins just wasn't comfortable with the striking. Lil Nog hit him with a bunch of strikes, and you just saw it in Pat Cummins' face. He just didn't like it. He did show off some kicking ability, which is cool because he's been training over at King's MMA, and it's great to see him improve in that area. But unfortunately, he couldn't get a takedown, and Lil Nog came out victorious. A lot of people thinking this was Pat Cummins' shot to sort of beat a legend and get himself back in the W section with a nice win. It didn't happen. He was super disappointed. And it's one of those situations where even though Pat is 35 years old, he's still fairly new to MMA, but he's sort of been thrust into a difficult role in the UFC where he's been fighting over in Brazil a lot and fighting a lot of tough dudes, and he has been racking up a bunch of losses. I mean, he's fought Teixeira, he's fought OSP, he's got a loss to
Daniel Cormier.
Daniel Cormier. So the list goes on of tough opponents that he's had. And he's not really in a position where he can have sort of easier opponents. He's sort of made his way up the ladder. So it's a tough one for Cummins. We'll see what happens to him next. Hopefully the UFC match him up with someone more along the level where he's at the moment. But it was a big, big win for Little Nog. And what a reception. I mean, it was a great moment for him. That soccer stadium going off. It was almost a picture-perfect way to finish out a career. But he's going to keep fighting. So it'll be interesting to see what happens for him next.
Well, Little Nog obviously has been on a big decline recently. We all remember him getting absolutely brutally destroyed by Anthony Rumble Johnson. He was sidelined with injuries and very far from relevant in the division. So I think this matchup was a good one for Pat Cummins from the standpoint that he's a name, he's a guy that everybody knows, but he's not really looking that great. If Pat Cummins beats him, he'll get, as they say, he'll get the rub. I think this was a winnable fight, even though it was a tough one because you think Pat Cummins, his biggest asset, his biggest tool is his wrestling. If you can't get the fight down to the ground, usually he struggles. And, with Little Nog, he's got the great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and he's got very good boxing as well. So I'm not too surprised by the result, but like you mentioned, Pat Cummins being 35 years old and still being new to MMA, I love Pat Cummins. He's one of the nicest guys, but you can't look at him as a prospect anymore. He's in the thick of it, and I think a lot of the ways, I don't want to write him off completely, but in a lot of ways, unfortunately, the wheels have kind of come off for Pat Cummins. I mean, pretty much all his losses do come via brutal knockout. I don't know how much his striking is going to improve within the short term. I mean, it may improve in the next few years, but by then he may rack up another 2 losses. And if he's going to get matched up with someone lower in the division, there are some tough fights for him. If you give him someone like, say, an Ilir Latifi, who has knockout power and strong wrestling, that could end bad. Nikita Krylov is on a decent streak. I actually think maybe Corey Anderson would be good. He's ranked 12th. He's straight below him. Corey Anderson, not really known for finishing power. So it's a fight where Pat Cummins could really practice his, potentially and hopefully improved striking if he does improve in his next fight. The other possibility will be John Vellante. That's another fight that he could take. John Vellante is ranked 15. But personally, I like this Corey Anderson matchup for Pat Cummins. Yeah,
it's one of those situations where Pat's one of those guys that really would have benefited from a really long sort of amateur career, and that's the problem with MMA. He can't really have much of an amateur career, and I think when he started out his professional MMA career, he was a very wrestling heavy, and then by the time he realized he had to pick up the game when it comes to striking, he ended up being in the octagon with some really good strikers. So I guess it's just a matter of him getting in the octagon, having that octagon time to get some belief in his striking, being able to work some new techniques in that octagon against guys who aren't going to be, up there like Little Nog or Glover Teixeira. So hopefully, I really like this Corey Anderson fight. I think he's still improving. We saw that with the leg kicks. It's just whether or not he's able to take those improvements, bring him into the fights, and use them against his opponents. So I guess we'll see what happens with Cummins. It's a shame that he's 35. If he was sort of in that mid-20s age range, you wouldn't worry as much, but because he is sort of at the other end of the 30 spectrum. And it's really weird because we spoke about this before. The whole division is getting old, and there's not that many prospects in the division that are young. So, yeah, interesting to see what's going to happen with the division over the next 6 or 7 years. That's the big question. And light heavyweight in general, people have talked about it for a long time. It's pretty depressing that there are no prospects. And Corey Anderson, who we'll be talking about in a second, but he was kind of a prospect, and he got derailed now. You look at the guys at the top. I mean, even say like a Ryan Bader who recently got destroyed. He's there at number 5, Gustafsson. A lot of these guys have already had their shots, so it's even more of an inclination to say that John Jones will probably end up in heavyweight once he runs out of title contenders. Yeah, that's right. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with both men. Little Nog has been fighting sort of once a year at the moment. I'm wondering at 39 years old, he'll want to pick up his schedule a little bit and finish out his career with a few more fights. I mean, I don't see him fighting past 40 for too much longer, but I guess we'll see what happens with both guys next. That Anderson matchup would be great. I'd really like to see that happen. All right, let's talk about the next fight. One of the craziest fights on the card, from Francisco Trinaldo versus Yancy Medeiros. A fight that saw Medeiros take an extreme amount of punishment. What did you think of this one, Dennis? Yeah, crazy. I mean, Yancy took a lot of shots to the head. He was almost superhuman, and at the very end of the fight, he helps Trinaldo up. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. People were wondering whether or not he's human or not. It was a fantastic fight for fans to watch because it was very back and forth. Trinaldo was really going for it, man. He was throwing some crazy bombs and was hitting Yancy with most of them. And then Yancy was able to have his own moments in the fight as well. Super impressive for both guys. I think Trinaldo, I mean, at his age and what he's been through, it's just awesome to see what he's been able to achieve in the sport of MMA. And no doubt about it, this was a huge win for him. I mean, a great moment in front of the crowd. Everybody was going crazy. But yeah, Yancy won a lot of respect in this fight. I think a lot of people already respected him, but just being able to take that much punishment and really turn it around at the end, a lot of people were sort of unhappy because they felt like the referee should have stopped the fight or his corner should have done something to try and stop the fight. But Yancy was defending, and he did sort of have his moment right at the end of the fight where he was on top and he was throwing punches. So I'm not sure if I'm in the same mind frame as those fans, but no doubt about it, he took a lot of punishment, a lot of shots to the head. Can't be very good for his health. But nevertheless, it was a really, really interesting fight. Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't the big win that he was hoping for. With Trinaldo, I mean, I haven't really looked too much as far as who he should face next, but considering the guys that he's beating, I think it's definitely time for a step up in competition, and he needs to face someone in the top 15 because he's on I think a 6-fight win streak at the moment. Yeah, and 37 years old. I mean, who knows how long we've got him for? There might be injuries, issues. Obviously, as you get older, you slow down a little bit. And it is a division where speed matters. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I would love to see him get a step up in competition. I almost feel like a lot of people really like him because of his story. He's got a great story behind him. The whole thing, how he was broke and didn't have any money, and now he's turned everything around thanks to MMA. It's a great story to listen to. So wherever they put him, I'm very excited to see who he fights next.
I don't remember which fight it was, but remember there was that tearjerker where he won the fight, and after the post-fight interview, he got on the stick and he said how he never had enough money to afford a birthday party, so then he was going to, have a birthday party and everybody in Brazil was invited. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I know. He's one of these guys probably that buys everything in his birthday party. And a couple of cheapskates like us who get everybody to bring snacks with them.
Yeah,
bring
exactly.
Your snacks and your presents.
Bring your own meat, bring your own chairs. The Submission Radio way.
It's our birthday. No. But there you go. Now, great to see. Hey, I would love to go to his birthday party. I mean, now that he's got the first one out of the way and has a knack for it, can you imagine what the second one's going to be like? I'm just imagining strippers and pyro.
Birthday party veteran. How about that? Well, it's August 24th, so we'll be at Las Vegas in July. So maybe we take a detour, take a month in Brazil, and party with old Francisco Trinaldo. Yeah,
that sounds like a plan. Get him some kind of present from here in Australia, maybe something nice. I'm sure he'll appreciate it.
Yeah. Packet of Tim Tams. He would have never been able to afford them. He would have never been able to eat them. So it'd probably blow his mind. And probably his next weight cut.
Yeah, that's true. And if we got him a packet of Tim Tams, I would lie about how rare they are but we'd put it in a fancy case. It would seem a lot nicer than it really is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We'd call it something like
radio case with some Tim Tams.
Yeah, it'd be like we'd probably sell to him as like the jewel of Australia. This is the most rare possession in Australia.
You know what would kill us though? So we spend all this money on this case, the submission radio case for Tim Tams. The case costs hundreds of dollars. The Tim Tams cost like $3. We get there and he goes, "Sorry, I don't eat dairy." Then what do we do with that Tim Tams? We take it out of the case, just give him the case?
Well, I'm sure we just don't give it to him. I'm sure there's somebody else in Brazil that will, fall for our ridiculous ruse. That it's the jewel of Australia.
Can you imagine if we spend all this money on a case of Tim Tams for him, and then he's like, "I love the present," and then later on we see him re-gift it to another fighter?
Imagine that. That'd be horrible.
I would feel so foolish.
Yeah. Gives it to like a Wally Alves or a Jose Aldo. I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so moving on to the plan will come through to fruition. All right, moving on. Thiago Santos versus Nate Marquardt. A sad ending for, yet another Nate Marquardt fight. What did you think about this one, Dennis?
Yeah, and it wasn't a surprise at all. I mean, Santos, amazing kickboxer, Muay Thai fighter, and just destroyed Marquardt. Marquardt had nothing for him. It was one of those things where, and I hate to harp on about this because you don't want to be like, "Hey man, you should retire," because the guy's had a really good career. He's done some really good things in MMA. Obviously, a lot of people love him, but I'm just going to come to it from a perspective of it's hard for me to watch him lose these fights and take all this extra damage at this stage of his career at this age, because he got hit pretty hard, and when he was down, actually, he tried to go for the referee's leg, which, leads you to believe that he was pretty out of it. He's 37 years old. He's had a great career, but a lot of the new fans that don't really know what he's done are sort of seeing Nate at, I guess, half of his potential, maybe even less. A guy who doesn't really have much confidence in his striking ability and not much of a chin. And it's just difficult to. I know over Twitter everybody was writing the same thing. They don't want to see Nate Marquardt go through this over and over, and he has gone through it over and over. So you would hope that possibly he might consider sort of hanging it up soon. He did have a win over CB Dollaway, and I think that maybe gave him a lot of confidence, but more times than not, he is getting stopped, and it's hard for everybody to watch.
Well, if you look at the stats, since 2013, he's had 8 fights, and six of those have been losses. And before that, obviously, he's had a really, really, really long career, all the way back to Pancrase. He had a long career in Pancrase before he ever stepped into the UFC, and that was 2005. Up until 2013, he had never lost 2 fights back-to-back. Never had a 2-loss win streak, and then he started in 2013. And to paint a picture for you, in 2013 he was in Strikeforce. So since then he has not had a pleasant in any way return to the UFC. And I mean, yeah, you mentioned the CB Dollaway win. Look, that was a great feel-good moment for him. I think a lot of people expected CB to beat him, but again, CB Dollaway, he's not really at that elite level. Nate Marquardt's days of competing with the elite competition are most certainly over. Nobody's under any false illusions that he's going to be a champion anytime soon. So then I guess you ask, why does he still do it? Is it a money case? I mean, considering the guy, he's had, 34 wins, 16 losses, 2 draws. I mean, I'm not really good at maths, but what is that? Like 1,000 fights? It's I think it's like what, 50, 53, 54 fights. That's a lot of fights. That's a lot of mileage on his career. So respect to the guy for still fighting and still sticking around, even though he's, reached the highest points of the actual sport without holding a UFC belt. But you got to wonder, why is he still doing it? I'm with you, man. I do think that the time has come to Nate Marquardt to finish up.
Yeah, and I was always thinking about why the UFC hung on to him, especially after he lost to Tarek Saffiedine, Jake Ellenberger, and Hector Lombard. He was sort of on a 3-fight losing streak, and I know the UFC and him didn't have a good relationship at one point after he got pulled out of that card last minute because of those issues. So I always wondered why they sort of keep him around, and they do pay him a lot of money for a guy that's sort of in his position. I think his show money's actually pretty good. And they usually do cut a lot of those fighters, but then I thought maybe they don't want him to go to Bellator or World Series of Fighting, something like that. I don't know. I'll be interested to see what happens.
He is a sweetheart. Could that be it?
He is. I mean, maybe they thought he'd turn it around. I don't know what it is. I mean, they held on to him for quite some time. But, yeah, it's one of those things where I think he believes he still has the best ahead of him. And maybe it's one of those things where maybe his trainers or someone close to him just needs to sit down with him and have that conversation. But, yeah, if it is for money, I think he needs to find another way to do it, because it's just hard to watch what his career has become compared to what it was before. And I was a huge Nate Marquardt fan and still am, but it's just hard to see him go out there and knowing what's going to happen. And I knew, Santos was going to do this to him, and it's just difficult.
Well, I think it's like when he was fighting at welterweight and he had that slight experiment and, was doing well in Strikeforce. He did end up being the welterweight champion, lost the title the next fight, and then he had that the brutal knockout against Jake Ellenberger, the brutal knockout against Hector Lombard. And, when we had him on the show a while back, he was saying that, a lot of those knockout losses were due to the fact that he was dehydrating himself. And, these were shots that he used to be able to take in training and he just couldn't anymore. And he was saying, well, what exactly is the issue? And he put it down to, well, it must be the weight cut. Then he had that win over James Sahuna. And then, now he's getting stopped as well. So it's clear that he can't take those shots anymore. So you can't use that excuse. And guys will often buy themselves more time when they move up a weight class or move down a weight class, much like Gray Maynard, who's going to 45. And that sort of stops him from getting cut. But now we're seeing the same pattern that we saw in welterweight. He's getting knocked out, he's taking more damage, and with a long career like that, I don't know, man. I just don't know why you. It sounds so rude, and I mean this with the most respect, but I don't know why you stay in the sport unless you need the money. I mean, if it's a case of being concerned for your health, then you should probably just hang it up. Again, I say that with the utmost respect.
Yeah, that's right. And if it's for the money, even though it's not as easy to work every day, I'm sure it's probably for the best for him to look at another career path. But nevertheless, we'll see what happens with the Nate. Let's go to the next fight. Speaking of veterans, Damian Maia versus Matt Brown. Before we get into this fight, Cass, let's talk about Matt Brown at the weigh-ins. Turns his back to the audience, throws up the double bird. What were you thinking? I'm thinking, hey, this is like a perfect heel professional wrestling moment here. This guy is getting a lot of heat from the fans.
I'm surprised more fighters don't do it. I think there's like an invisible no-no that you don't do that to the crowd because they're the paying fans or something like that. But let's be honest, man, the UFC, it's all about characters. It's all about who you love, who you hate, who you're going for.
Sure, yeah.
And it's really not that far away from the WWE other than, it's a real sport. But MMA fans don't get shitty that comment. It is absolutely true. So I didn't have any issue with it. I thought, considering how much the fans were giving it to him, and rightfully so, he's a American in Brazil. Of course they're going to go for Damian Maia. I liked it, man. I thought it was good that he gave it back to the crowd. What about you?
Yeah, no, I loved it. And then, of course, on the way to the ring, he paid for it when apparently 3 fans punched him. One or two to the back of the head. You saw there was that one exchange where I think he turned around to even punch the fan back. I don't like to see that happen, though, when the guy's walking down to the ring and a few punches from fans. Yeah. I know that you got security on both sides, but should there have been a thing there where they knew Matt was going to come out and he was going to get punched by fans? I don't know. I think as a fighter, if I was walking out to the ring and dudes were punching me in the back of the head from the crowd, that would definitely take something away from my performance because I'd be so pissed off and angry about it. I know Dana White actually tweeted out about it and he had one of those sort of sad, embarrassed faces on Twitter. Matt Brown getting punched in the head 3 times and sad, embarrassed face. I'm sure it's nothing that the UFC would like to see happen, but nevertheless, it happened. And it was a very weird, it was very strange. I mean, you don't expect to see that happen. It was a pretty interesting moment before the fight even started. Well, he actually went and punched the fans back. I think the last guy that did it, Matt Brown, actually went and hit him back. And you know what? I'm all for it. If you're... I don't think anyone listening to the show was any one of those fans, but if you are ever at an MMA event, whether it's UFC, Bellator, local, high-end, whatever, and if you touch a fighter during their walkout, you are an idiot. These guys have put in so much work, so much hard work, so much money, so much preparation to go out there, fight, and you're there because you want to be entertained. At the end of the day, you're going there because you want to see them there. And, you know, if they're going to get beaten, let their opponent do it. But if you touch a fighter in any way, you're an absolute idiot and incredibly selfish. Look, it's one thing to boo. And really, like, these guys are hitting Matt Brown, what? Because he flipped in the bird? How childish can you be? You know what I mean? Yeah, for sure. Well, it's one of those things where I don't know what actually happened to the fans. I don't know if you do or not, but I think if you touch a fighter, you automatically get ejected and you get some kind of massive fine. That's what has to happen from now on. You got to set a standard. I know it's Brazil, so it probably won't happen here, but we don't want this to start happening more and more with people that don't like fighters. So I think there's got to be some strict shit that happens because of it. But nevertheless, wasn't happy to see that happen. But anyway, let's talk about the fight. Damian Maia, Matt Brown, Damian Maia, new nickname, Spider Monkey, was on the back a lot of the fight. I mean, I was just impressed at the fact that he was able to be a backpack for a lot of the fight. Again, super impressive with his jiu-jitsu. Matt Brown actually impressed me with the fact that he was able to survive for so long. Didn't like that he had a couple of fence grabs there as well at the start of the fight. But nevertheless, Damian Maia beat him with that submission. What did you think of the fight, Cass? Did you enjoy watching Damian Maia do his thing? I do. Look, I know that there's a lot of people out there who think that, you know, jiu-jitsu's boring, grappling's boring, but I do enjoy watching Damian Maia. For me, I thought that this fight was basically decided in the first 40 seconds of the fight when Damian Maia was able to get Matt Brown against the cage, got that single, and you don't ever want Damian Maia to get you up against the cage because once he does, you know, not only does he have that amazing single, but he's got trips and sweeps as well, so foot sweeps. We also had that amazing one that he had against Chael Sonnen many years ago, tripped him and put him straight into a triangle. So once he did that to Matt Brown, I mean, that pretty much answered the question of whether Matt Brown was going to be able to keep it on the feet. Look, it was great. It was a great performance by Damian Maia, but as often happens with his performances, he's able to get his opponent down and he's good for the first couple of rounds, and then he starts to tire a little bit, and then, you know, we see the shots from, you know, really far out. He doesn't really set them up, and we saw that in the third round. Look, Matt Brown, basically, the first round was a write-off. He knew it. The second round was a write-off. I believe there was a moment where he's looking to the referee. He was hoping for a stand-up. I thought that was stupid. And it actually ended up happening that Damian Maia advanced his position and flattened him out on his back. So, you know, dumb mistake by Matt Brown, but okay, whatever. He's not trying to conserve energy. He probably understands that, look, he's not really going to be able to out-grapple Damian Maia. And if he tries anything, you know, Damian's probably going to, you know, sink things in even deeper. In the third round, though, you could see Damian Maia shooting from far out, and he wasn't looking as fresh as in the first 2 rounds. Matt Brown was stuffing takedowns. You know, there was that moment in the second where Matt Brown sprawled. Damian Maia pushed him all the way to the fence, took him down. That wasn't happening anymore. And he landed that punch on Damian Maia, and it looked like he hurt him, but not to the point where, you know, the fight was really in jeopardy or he was going to win. And I don't know why Matt Brown followed him down to the mat. It's like you write off the first 2 rounds. You know, you're basically waiting for that bell so you can restart in the next round. And then he voluntarily went down, you know, to the ground with Damian Maia. He really didn't look that hurt. I don't know, maybe Matt Brown thought he was going to finish the fight, but I really would have rather to see him stand up, and most likely Damian Maia would, you know, he wouldn't have been that hurt, but Matt Brown would have had another shot to hurt him, or, you know, more shots to stuff more takedowns, and Damian Maia would get more tired. So I'm a bit disappointed in the way that Matt Brown, you know, did it in the third round. Yeah, it's a great point there, Cass. Now, a lot of people going crazy on Twitter and social media trying to figure out where Damian Maia fits in this crazy mix that we call the welterweight division. Obviously, Wonderboy Thompson, he was on the show just this episode. And if he beats Rory MacDonald, a lot of people believe he should be the next man to get the title shot. Of course, then you also have Nick Diaz waiting in the wings. And no doubt about it, the UFC will want to put him up against Robbie Lawler as soon as they can because it's a huge money fight. And Nick Diaz as champion could be a good thing for pay-per-view money. And obviously, Damian Maia, where does he go next? I mean, a lot of people are not sure what to do with him. What's your perspective on this whole thing?
Nah, man, he's not getting that title shot. I know, look, he's a really nice guy. He's a great guy. The kind of guy you look at and you think, man, he deserves the world just for being so nice.
Nice hair, soft hair.
That's all right. Could be better.
I feel like people don't give his hair enough credit. It's silky and it's bouncy.
Well, why doesn't he get the Head and Shoulders sponsorship then?
I feel like Head and Shoulders is just dropping the ball at this point.
Lyoto Machida.
Who didn't they give a sponsorship to before that we were complaining about?
Elias Theodorou, I think.
Okay, he didn't have one. Lyoto Machida had one, right?
But is his hair really that bouncy?
Well, I feel like it's dried up a little bit over the last sort of few months.
And we may
Holly
not...
Holm, great hair.
Yes,
where's her endorsement?
Yes. And we may not see Lyoto Machida or his hair for a couple of years, but... All right, I'll agree with you.
I'm not shampooing my hair with a fighter who's not active.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'm happy for Damian Maia to get it. Whether he gets it or not, he's on a 5-fight win streak, if my maths are correct. So, look, I know a lot of people have been saying that they want to see him getting the title shot, and not just fans, not just media, fighters. We had Gunnar Nelson on the show, and he said that he wanted Damian Maia to get the next title shot. Neil Magny in Australia during the post-fight press after he beat Hector Lombard. What a nice guy. Nothing about himself getting a title shot or, going up and fighting on. He said he wanted Damian Maia to get the next title shot. The only problem is, if Stephen Wonderboy Thompson does beat Rory MacDonald, you can't deny the guy the next title shot. I mean, Tyron Woodley, I don't really agree with that title shot in the first place. And then you look at the other possibilities. There's Carlos Condit. You mentioned Nick Diaz. Apparently, Carlos Condit may or may not be fighting Nick Diaz later on in the year. There was something, I saw an article about it, something going off. I think Carlos Condit's Snapchat. I don't have Snapchat, so I don't see what he said. I saw some people were saying that Carlos was joking. So I don't know. Maybe Carlos is fighting Nick Diaz, maybe not. The winner of that fight could potentially be fighting for the title, but I think in the time being, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson should get the next shot. And I think what's next for Damian Maia, unfortunately, is probably either Johnny Hendricks or Carlos Condit if he doesn't fight Nick Diaz, because... And you might think, stylistically, those are hard fights. Johnny Hendricks might be stuffing takedowns, and he might knock Damian Maia out, and Carlos Condit probably won't stuff takedowns, but he might light up Damian Maia in the feet. I just look, timing-wise, he's just not that close to a title shot. That's what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think definitely the winner of Hendricks-Gaslam, especially if Hendricks wins. And I think that would be a really great fight to watch because I'd be really interested to see what happens in that fight. And Damian Maia, he might take the long road to become champion, but the funny thing is, because by the time he becomes champion, he would have had to beat most of the guys in the division. It'll be interesting to see who he ends up defending his belt against.
Up to middleweight straight away.
If you beat Hendricks, and then somehow, who knows, if he has to beat Condit or something, there might be only one or two other options for him in the whole division. So it'll be interesting, but I'm one of those people that I'd like to see Damian be a champion because he's such a nice guy, but I'm more excited about some of these matchups, like him and Hendricks. What's going to happen there? Would he be able to dominate Hendricks on the ground because Hendricks is a wrestler, or will Hendricks, knock him out? And him and Condit as well. I mean, you'd think Condit would probably use his footwork and his striking and stop Maia from, grappling him and beating him in that area, but you just never know because he's so damn good. So those are matchups I'm pretty excited about, whether he becomes champion or not.
You know what? I think other than the actual time aspect, I don't know how high up on Damian Maia the UFC are as far as him being the champion.
Yeah, that's right.
Because his style, while, a lot of people enjoy it, it doesn't appeal to everybody. And then there's the fact that, he has had some 5-round fights, but he does tend to gas towards the end. And honestly, I'm not giving him much of a shot against Robbie Lawler. I think Robbie Lawler's takedown defense these days is very, very good. And if they do stand and exchange, I think Damian Maia may potentially get knocked out. And I don't know, I don't want to see a fight where Damian Maia has one of those performances where he just butt scoots and he can't really take his opponent down. So, not really much happens. So, look, it's not that I'm against Damian Maia getting a title shot, but I just think there's more exciting fights, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and I think they're still a little bit hurt by that Anderson Silva fight.
They'll never forget that. No way.
Yeah, that's still weighing on their conscience. Imagine if and they're probably thinking from a perspective of, imagine if he becomes champion and we can't find anyone to beat him and he stays champion for a while. That would really suck for them. They might think because he might not be boring, he's not a promoter, he doesn't really talk trash, that kind of thing. So definitely see it from their perspective as well.
Well, they'll have to wait till he retires, but at 38, that might not be too far away. You know, it's one of those things where it's like a company, somebody gets promoted, and then they're like, we can't fire him, we just have to wait till they retire. And they're like, I'm going to give this company another 10 years. And you're like, shit, I wish you didn't say that.
I feel great. Well, there you guys go. Now, jumping into the main card and kicking it off, Barberena versus Alves was an interesting fight. A lot of people calling Barberena the party pooper, Cass. Tell me what you thought about this fight, and why do you think people are calling him the party pooper?
Well, he was in there to lose. It was clear as daylight. Wally Alves was a huge prospect as far as not only the welterweight division, but just Brazilian fighters in general. And I want to take a detour to sort of explain this story. I was reading an article, and I got to give credit. It was Pat Wyman, who, by the way, does incredible breakdowns, him and Conor Rebush. Big respect to those guys. And it was on Bleacher Report, and it was an article about how all of Brazil's legendary fighters and just Brazilian fighters in general, the ones that we grew up loving, the guys from Pride, etc., they're all aging and they're all on their way out. And that was a big representation here at UFC 198. You've got Vitor Belfort, you've got Fabrizio Verdum, you've got Shogun Rua, you had Anderson Silva, you've got Little Nog, the other Nog already retired. There's a whole bunch of Brazilian fighters that we all grew up on, absolute legends. They're on their way out, and the scary thing about it is that there's not really that many Brazilian prospects at the moment. I mean, yeah, you have Thomas Almeida, but you don't really have too many others. You know, a lot of them have been derailed, or a lot of them stuck to sort of mid-card, status. There isn't really too many that are like, oh man, that guy's going to be a champion. And if there are, like, okay, Glover Teixeira, he's doing really well in light heavyweight, right? But he's pretty old. He's already had a long career. Again, Damian Maia doing pretty well, close to a title shot. But again, how much longer is he going to be here?
Jacare, pretty old as well.
Jacare, even if he does become a champion, again, how much longer is he going to be here? Wally Alves was kind of one of the only hopes. Obviously I mentioned Thomas Almeida, but Wally Alves was the other one. And that's pretty much what they were hoping for. The Wally Alves on this massive stage, on this massive card, was going to get a great win over Brian Barberena. And Brian, fuck your prospects, Barberena, was like, I'm not having that. And I tweeted it out. Prospect Killer would work also as a nickname. Forget Bam Bam. Brian the Barberena, he goes in, he beats Sage Northcutt, but okay, Sage Northcutt was kind of like a young guy, didn't really have experience, and some people picked it. Nobody picked him to beat Wally Alves in this fight. So, huge upset, and Brian Barberena, man, just, who are they going to put him up against next? Thomas Almeida, maybe Thiago Santos, anyone who's on the rise. I just don't give him Brian Barberena.
Yeah, they'll give him Chris Cyborg. Take another one down.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, I mean, I was really surprised he was able to beat Alves. I thought Alves was going to beat him. So Barberena with the win. I think he's got a lot more respect from fans. I think a lot of people sort of knew his name from the whole Sage thing, but there was a lot of stuff wrapped up, and people saying that Sage wasn't feeling well, making a lot of excuses. And now I think with this fight, bang, bang, Barberena, a lot more respect from fans. A lot of people see him as a more legitimate prospect in the division. So good on him. I mean, it's a tough one to go over to Brazil and beat a guy like Alves, and he did it.
Well, that's the other thing. It's not like he stopped him. He beat him by decision, and it was a really close fight. It really did come down to the third round. I did think it was the right call, but you never know with those Brazilian judges. And I think
they were crazy, weren't they? They were crazy this event. They did some crazy stuff.
I think most people were like, here we go, Wally Alves,
Yeah.
Wally Alves was going to get this decision in a close fight in Brazil, and Barberena still pulled it off. So even more impressive. I think that, considering he's at welterweight, if the UFC, for whatever reason, don't want Damian Maia to get that title shot because they're not a fan of his style, a certain phone call is going to be placed, and they'll be like, send in the Barberena, and then Barberena. Yeah, he's like Newman in Seinfeld, where he's like, I'm the problem solver. I make problems go away. That's Brian Barberena for you.
Yeah, there you go. Eating muffin bottoms and taking care of business. Interested to see what happens next for Barberena. But speaking of legends, Shogun took on Corey Anderson. And what a lot of people thought was Corey Anderson's coming out party. It didn't quite work out for Anderson. Somebody forgot the chips and dips, and he also got beaten by Shogun. Cass, what did you think of this? First of all, did the judges get it right? Did the right man get his hand raised?
Yeah, I think they did. Look, Corey Anderson clearly won the third round. What it really comes down to is the second round. And I just don't think that Corey Anderson, look, he controlled Shogun for the majority of the second round, but he didn't really land much damage Obviously, Shogun dropped Corey in the first round, so we'll give him that one. And then he did the same thing in that second round. And I guess the debate is, Shogun dropping Corey, does it undo everything that Corey did beforehand? And I think it does, because even though Corey was able to get Shogun down, he really didn't land much. You know, the shots that he landed, they weren't really damaging. A lot of them were jabs and just little shots. And I think it was pretty close and pretty even up until that moment where Shogun dropped him in the second round. So I think it was the right decision. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It was a close one, but I think the right man got his hand raised. It was a great moment for Shogun. I mean, a packed soccer stadium. A lot of people could say a great place to retire after a great career in MMA, but he didn't pull the trigger. He didn't retire. He seemed very keen to keep on fighting. I mean, the big question is, who do you even give him next? Is there a name that stands out in your mind, Cass, as someone that you'd like to give him? And can I say no more Dan Henderson fights, please?
Yeah, I don't want any more Dan Henderson fights. Even though they were great, right? But I actually think he should have retired. You know, at this point, I don't think there's a tremendous amount of winnable fights for Shogun. And again, I say that with the utmost respect. So you come home to Curitiba, you know, your hometown where Shootbox started, and you get this win, a fight that I think a lot of people expected him to lose, and then there was the decision, so it was like twice they expected him to lose. All right, it wasn't the most amazing win. It's not the kind of win where you go like, man, I could go out on a win like that. But then I'll give you another example. Big Nog, right? Came back to Brazil, beat Brendan Schaub in a fight that everybody thought he was going to lose. Massive celebration. That would have been a perfect time to retire. Didn't. Stuck around and just, you know, spent the next few years having, you know, brutal fights and brutal losses, you know, getting knocked out, getting his arm broken by Verdum, getting outpointed in a boring fight against Stefan Struve, and I just don't want to see that for Shogun. I think this is the perfect opportunity for him to retire. But seeing as he didn't, look, you can give him Rashad Evans, because that fight was the original one that they were supposed to make when was it? A few weeks ago, where Glover Teixeira stepped in last second. They're both kind of in similar places, both Shogun and Rashad. They're both pretty close to retirement. Look, you can make that fight, and it's one of those loser leaves town fights. Whoever loses should probably retire. Whoever wins sort of lives to fight another day, if only another day. The other option, you can give him Jimmy Manuwa. I like Shogun. I don't want you to think I don't like him because I'm suggesting Jimmy Manuwa, because it's a fight that he could very well lose. And I believe it's a fight that was supposed to happen at one point. But Shogun's probably not going to win too many fights, so if you're going to use him for anything, use him to build up other talent, use him to build up other stars. And maybe if Jimmy Manuwa, who's currently ranked number 9, if he beats Shogun, at least that'll propel him further into a division, you know. And Jimmy obviously isn't like really that much of a prospect because he's pretty old as well. He's at 36, but at least he's new blood. Yeah,
the only other name I might have said was Ryan Bader. Obviously, Ryan's not doing too well at the moment, but maybe this will sort of help him build a bit of steam behind the old sails. I think the UFC might want him to have a few more fights, obviously, and maybe that will help people get excited about it. But yeah, definitely not many options for him to fight. I mean, I think if Rampage was still around in the UFC, that would have been a good fight to put together, but alas, he is gone and in Bellator, so there we go.
I don't mind the Ryan Bader matchup, actually. That's not a bad fight. Ryan Bader does need to bounce back. I feel like he needs someone who he can gain some momentum off, so that's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, we'll see what they run with. Now let's jump over to this catchweight showdown. I mean, a lot of people really excited to see Cyborg in the UFC walking down to the octagon. I mean, who would have thought we would have seen it? But it happened, and it happened today versus Leslie Smith. Leslie obviously coming off a big win here in Brisbane on Arena Kai. Cass, what did you think when you saw Cyborg officially in the octagon in the UFC? Did you have to pinch yourself? Did everything sort of look right to you? What did you think?
I think the moment where it set in was when they released that photo of her with the photo shoot with the Reebok clothing on, and it was like, that's what made it real. Like, holy shit, she's wearing Reebok. She's actually in here. And before we even spoke to her, you know, I saw this video where she was talking about sponsors, and she's like, contact me if you want to sponsor me for this fight. And I was like, what do you mean sponsors? Like, did you not get the memo? They're doing Reebok now. But it turns out it was sponsors for her actual documentary. But before that, I was like, man, is she going to get some kind of special exemption? No way. So, but yeah, seeing her run down to the cage was just insane. It was a moment that a lot of people, including myself, many times thought, you know what, this probably just isn't going to happen, especially once she said that she definitely wasn't going to be making 135. So I'm glad the UFC decided to play ball, was like, all right, you know what, we want her in here, we're just going to do catchweight fights.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, big star. And in a lot of ways, even though a lot of great matchups on this card, a lot of people sort of looked forward to her UFC debut almost more than any other one of the fights on the card. A lot of people got really excited for it. And obviously the fight went as everybody predicted. She beat Leslie Smith. I mean, some of those combinations are absolutely brutal. Leslie not too happy at the end there when they were calling out Cyborg, the winner. I didn't really get to hear that well, Cass, because my audio wasn't really up. What exactly was Leslie upset about?
She didn't want the fight stopped. So basically, I think what she said was, I didn't stop. And that was basically, she didn't stop fighting. She was trying to roll out of it. You mentioned the brutal combinations. I believe it was 4 hooks that dropped Leslie initially. I mean, she was just getting countered all over the place. And yeah, when she was on the ground, the Cyborg dropped her and Cyborg was following up. She was trying to roll out of it. And look, I don't think it was a bad stoppage. I know a lot of people are saying it was premature. I wouldn't have minded see it go for maybe a second or 2 or maybe even 3 seconds longer. I know a lot of people are saying, look, the same would have happened if she had gotten up. Look, probably, but we don't know that. I don't think it was... How do I say it? It's funny to say I don't think it was foregone. All right, I kind of think it was foregone, but I do think, considering Leslie's toughness, she probably did deserve maybe a second or 2. But, I mean, we're talking an ideal world. I'm not sitting here saying it was a horrible stoppage. I'm okay with it. But I guess the other thing you got to remember about Leslie Smith is she's protested stoppages before. When her ear exploded against Jessica Ai, she didn't think that stoppage should have been, stopped either. So, it sucks for her. And I know some people are sort of giving Leslie crap, like, you're delusional, you're crazy if you're thinking that shouldn't be stopped. I mean, look, these are warriors, and that's the kind of mindset that, you need to have to be a successful fighter. Every fighter considers that, hey, if a fight stopped, it's not because I wasn't, good enough, it's because something, something went wrong and they basically just want to continue fighting. So, you got to respect that about Leslie, and I feel sorry to see someone with such a beautiful smile, and, you watch her videos and interviews leading up to this event. We got to interview her here in Brisbane. She's got an amazing smile, such a happy person. It's sad to see someone like that, get destroyed, but, it happens.
Yeah, great person. Awesome time in Brisbane when we spoke to her, and, a lot of respect for her actually taking the first fight at catchweight with Cyborg. Cyborg, I mean, she's coming off a lot of momentum now. A lot of people are excited to see what happens next to her. Some people suggesting possibly a catchweight fight with Ronda Rousey at 205. Over at Madison Square Garden. A lot of other people saying maybe something with Holly Holm. If it was up to you, Cass, what would you like to see Cyborg have next? Who would you like to see her fight?
I'd love to see her any combination of, Holly Holm, Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey. Obviously, Miesha's booked already, but, I'd like to see her go up against the top women in the division. But the only problem is, if you're a 135-pounder and you have even the slightest bit of sanity, you're not going to take that fight.
No.
Look, I don't blame Holly Holm for not taking that fight. She wants to get back in there and, earn herself a title shot. You're not going to get derailed and set yourself back a year or 2 by fighting and potentially losing to Chris Cyborg. I don't know if Ronda Rousey's going to come back and take that fight. I mean, you saw how she got knocked out against Holly Holm. I'd be incredibly impressed if she came back after, spending majority of the year. I think by the time she does come back, if it is November, she'll be on the shelf for about a year, doing movies and all these kinds of things. I'd be shocked if she took this Cyborg fight. So I think that's all but, you can pretty much write that one off. And Miesha's the champ, so she probably won't be taking it anytime soon either. I think the other 2 options, Jermaine Derandami, she originally wanted to take that fight. She's obviously a phenomenal kickboxer and striker, but she didn't want to miss out on fighting in her hometown in UFC Rotterdam. So she did that. Yeah. Great fight. I would love to see her fight Chris Cyborg, and especially because with Jermaine, she's got some momentum, but she's not that close to title contention. I think the girls that are going to take this fight are ones that aren't close to title contention because they don't want to ruin their chances. You could do Betch Correia as well, and I wouldn't give Betch Correia much of a chance either, but I mean, at this point, I don't think you need a massive star to fight Chris Cyborg. I think Chris Cyborg is the attraction, kind of like Ronda Rousey was the attraction. And, perfect example, Leslie Smith, not on anybody's radar, took the fight, and look, people weren't thrilled with the matchup, but it didn't matter. They came out, and everybody just wanted to see Cyborg's debut, so I think you can really give Cyborg anybody in the division, even if it's the middle or lower end, and people still won't mind. They just want to see Cyborg fight.
And I definitely think that if Miesha Tate loses at UFC 200 somehow and loses her title, maybe then she'll be in a position where she won't really have that much to lose and in a position where she wants to make as much money in her career before she retires. And that would make a huge, huge matchup, or possibly like a UFC 205 or something like that. But nevertheless, I agree with you. She's a huge name, and whoever you put against her, people will watch. So it's going to be exciting to see if anybody raises their hand after seeing what happened to poor Leslie Smith at UFC 198.
Well, I was thinking, like, if you're going to have any issues with Cyborg in the UFC, it's the fact that she is bigger, and who knows who's actually going to take that fight. You know, it's one thing to have a division, but who's actually going to put their hand up? That's why I think Jermaine would be a good opponent, because she actually did put her hand up. She wanted that fight. But then again, if not her, then I just don't know how many other, women at 35 are going to risk their careers temporarily for a fight that, doesn't... I mean, it obviously does a lot for them, but there's just a lot to lose, if you know what I mean.
Oh, certainly. And a lot of talk about possibly a Mayweather-Cyborg fight, so we'll see what happens there.
I expect that. Right after the Conor McGregor fight, of course.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, crazy stuff happening there. But let's jump into the co-main event of the evening. Jacare versus Vitor Belfort. Belfort using some unorthodox breathing techniques while cutting weight, whether it's munching on ice or doing weird techniques or making weird faces. I'm always amazed by some of the cool techniques and some of the unique ways that Vitor Belfort prepares to cut his weight and cuts the weight. It's pretty crazy. What did you think about some of the weird noises he was making leading into the build-up of the fight?
I was no doubt aroused, as I usually am when Vitor Belfort does this crazy breathing technique. He's an interesting guy, that Vitor Belfort. You can
cauliflower pizza. Was he making cauliflower pizza? I think he was making cauliflower pizza and embedded.
Yeah. You got issues with cauliflower pizza?
Well, is it pizza? Or are we just talking about, just a base with some cauliflower? Actually, it did look delicious. He sold me on it.
No, he didn't. Don't lie. You're not sold at all.
I hate him, and I'll never eat cauliflower pizza.
You want the original pie. I'll tell you what, man. Like, I've been in some shithouse shape recently, and I recently decided, all right, it's diet time. And I decided to cut carbs, and as you know, you can be pretty miserable when you can't eat like potatoes or anything. Actually, the other day, I got a bunch of last night, I got cauliflower, and I was like, I'll do cauliflower mash, because I see it's what the kids are doing these days. Bit of cauliflower, you boil it, you put some hot English mustard in there, some salt and pepper, some butter, bam, it's almost like mashed potatoes. I'm lying to myself, I'm dying on the inside, but I'll tell you what, man, cauliflower, I might even be making some cauliflower pizzas in the future. Yeah.
So, a good tasty review on the mash. Worthwhile.
I didn't say it was tasty. I just said it was a substitute. Nah, it's good. It's good. I recommend it. Just don't put too much hot English mustard like I did, or you'll blow your nose off. But you'll never have a cold ever again.
Wow, there you go. Well, yeah, he's an interesting guy, and obviously a lot of eyes on him after, obviously his body's looking different, a few things different about him. He slowed down a little bit. But going into this fight, I had Jacare. I thought he was going to beat him. Were you of the same mindset? Did you think this was going to be a fight that Vitor Belfort was going to lose?
Yes, but I thought it was going to happen later. I thought if Jacare is going to beat him, I think the first round, I thought he'd sort of weather the storm, maybe try and slow him down. Vitor Belfort, he's got a good ground game. I mean, it doesn't compare to Jacare. I thought maybe he'll be able to defend for the first round, maybe second round, and then I thought in the third round, later on in the fight, Jacare is going to get him. I didn't expect him. First of all, I thought it was going to be a submission. I didn't expect him to knock him out. I didn't expect him to do it in the first round either. So I was pleasantly surprised. That was a great performance by Jacare.
Yeah, and it's great to see him get his dues. I mean, he had to wait for a bit there in the wings and didn't really get the, respect and attention that he deserved. But you'd think he's right up there and nearing a title shot. I mean, a lot of people talking about whether or not Michael Bisping will get this title shot. I know some people were saying maybe he's linked to a fight with Robert Whittaker in November here in Melbourne. But I think between the two, I really would rather see Jacare take on the winner of Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman.
Well, especially if we're talking Luke Rockhold. If Luke Rockhold defends, which I think he will, then I don't really have that much interest in seeing a Bisping-Rockhold fight. It'd be a great build-up. Both of them would sell the fight, but I think Rockhold would win. I mean, Jacare has been looking really good. I still think Rockhold beats Jacare in a rematch, but I have a much easier time believing that Jacare may be able to pull it off. So I think Jacare's journey, and he had that long streak, and it was kind of derailed by Yoel Romero, but that was a really close fight, one that you could arguably give to Jacare. So in theory, he's on a 7 or 8 or maybe more fight win streak. I think he's finally arrived. He's finally cemented his place Maybe not in the division, because who knows, he may be able to go further and become the champion, but I think he's definitely earned that title shot. I don't think there's anybody else you can even really consider, and that's including Michael Bisping, even though he did beat Anderson Silva. The other thing I was going to say is Vitor Belfort. I mean, his days of competing for the title and really fighting the top, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in the division, I think they're completely over. I will say his body looked probably better than it has in a long time. When he came back and he fought Chris Weidman, he looked horrible and deflated. When he fought Dan Henderson, he sort of looked a little bit better. And here he was sort of starting to look like the old Vitor Belfort, even though he didn't have that, crazy mass and crazy size, and he wasn't as hard he was in the past. But yeah, I think in this fight, he had almost nothing for Jacare. There was that moment where he was trying to defend a takedown, and he pulled guard on Jacare. I mean, how crazy was that? He had basically no other options other than to pull guard. So yeah, I don't see him having much success against any of the top guys. And he's another guy where I don't think he's retiring anytime soon, but he is getting old. He's the old lion, as they say, and he's another aging Brazilian that probably won't be sticking around too much longer.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see what they do with him next. Maybe a fight with Chael Sonnen when Sonnen decides to return to the UFC. If he does, could be a good one, because I know Sonnen has a lot of negative things to say about him. Or maybe a fight with Tim Kennedy once Tim Kennedy can actually get a fight with the UFC. I don't know. His schedule's all over the place. Obviously, he said all that stuff about Reeboks. I don't know if the UFC will be willing to give him that fight, but both fights that could have interesting build-up to them. So I guess it just depends how soon Vitor wants to get back in there. But you'd imagine being a bit older, he'd want to get back in there as soon as possible and sort of have his last few fights before he retires.
Yeah, Chael Sonnen's one that I didn't actually think of, but now that you mention it, I like it. I was thinking Anderson Silva, because they're both aging. Anderson Silva's coming off a loss. He's coming off a loss. Neither one of them going to be fighting for a title anytime soon. So maybe just have them face off, do that rematch. I think that fight could potentially be fireworks. Or you could give him the winner of Mousasi and Derek Brunson at UFC 200 with the hope that Mousasi or Brunson would beat him and make their case for a title shot, kind of using Vitor Belfort like that. You mentioned Tim Kennedy. I have nothing against that fight. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight, but I just have a feeling that with the UFC and the way Tim Kennedy is extremely honest and he loves calling people out about PEDs and cheating and steroids, it'd be a PR nightmare for them to give him Vitor Belfort, because that's the main thing that he's going to talk about. I think if the UFC are going to give Tim Kennedy a fight, they're probably going to give him someone who's never ever come even close to failing a test, so they won't have to hear about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the Anderson Silva, because it apparently it takes him something like 6 weeks and he'll be ready to go again. And I know you and me, we've tweeted it out. We're hoping he might be ready in time for UFC 200. And who knows if they give him Uriah Hall again or not. But Uriah Hall, possibly another guy that they might want to get the shine from Vitor Belfort. Or if they're crazy, they might even give him a Talis Latis. So I guess we'll see what happens.
You know what? Speaking of crazy, so there's 2 fights that fell out. One of them kind of got saved. There was Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall, and then there was temporarily BJ Penn versus Dennis Siver. But now it looks like it's going to be BJ Penn versus Cole Miller. Am I crazy am I one of the only people who was actually more excited for BJ Penn versus Dennis Siver than Anderson Silva and Uriah Hall?
I don't know. I mean, I think I was more excited for the Anderson Silva Uriah Hall thing, just because I'm just really interested to see what's happening with Anderson Silva. And with BJ Penn, for me, he's sort of past his prime, and I don't really expect him to do much. But yeah, I don't know. I don't fault you for being excited about BJ coming back and having that fight with Dennis at all.
I appreciate your very PR answer. You don't want to hurt my feelings. It sounds like you think I am actually crazy.
You're a crazy old coot, and let's stop doing the show and just let's get out of here. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I can understand. Look, I was really excited about that fight. So what's the latest on it? Did they confirm which event that they're going to be moving it to? Is it still at UFC 199 or?
I'm not sure. I think the goal is 199, but I'll explain my reasoning. Right, Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall. It was a bit of a nothing fight in terms of relevance. Uriah Hall, I don't see him competing for the title anytime soon. Anderson Silva likewise. So it was just kind of a fun fight. But here's the thing: they're both counter strikers, and Anderson Silva, he doesn't really want to lead, and Uriah Hall a lot of times backpedals, and he was looking great in training, but he just sometimes has off nights. And I just had this feeling that yes, they have a lot of knockouts on their resume, and yes, they have had some. I mean, Anderson Silva, it's unfair to say that he's had some amazing performances. He's made a career out of amazing performances, but he's just not that same Anderson, and those amazing performances, they don't always come if his opponent doesn't want to lead, and I just didn't think Uriah Hall was going to lead. I think with Uriah Hall, yeah, he may try and counter-strike. So you have two counter-strikers that just wouldn't really be doing much, and I had this feeling that it may be a three-round fight that leaves a really bitter taste in people's mouths. Then there's BJ Penn versus Dennis Siver, and I kind of thought, like, wow, Dennis Siver's probably the perfect opponent for BJ Penn. And, like, when BJ Penn talks about coming back and fighting for the title and all these kinds of things, like, I don't believe it. I don't think that he's ever going to be a featherweight champion, especially considering the way he got beaten by Frankie Edgar, and I can't see him beating Conor McGregor or any of those guys at the top end. But I was more intrigued, like, just the fact that, okay, he is coming back. He's going to have another go at featherweight. He had that horrendous false start against Frankie Edgar where he had that bizarre game plan and that bizarre stance and he was standing on his tiptoes, and now he's got, Jackson Winklejohn in his corner, which is a phenomenal camp, and we saw what they did with Alistair Overeem. So I was just a little bit more curious, how is BJ Penn going to look these days? Again, not expecting him to win that title, but, I thought the Dennis Siver was a winnable fight, and to me, I had a bit more intrigue of like, okay, because with Anderson Silva and Uriah Hall, I kind of felt like I could predict the situations, like, all right, and, either guy who wins, it doesn't really matter to me, whereas with BJ Penn, I was like, I don't know, I'm genuinely curious how he's going to look. That's my thoughts.
Well, I mean, you have a lot of merit in that opinion. I think it will be very exciting for everybody listening actually at home. The fight is official for UFC 199 against Cole Miller, so get excited. It's still happening. It was supposed to happen on UFC 199, not UFC 198. Are you still excited about this fight, even though Cole Miller stepped in, Cass, or is this a less excited Casper here?
No, I'm still excited. I still think that it is a winnable fight for BJ. I mean, it's tough. He's going to be giving up a lot of reach. And listen, I wouldn't be surprised if BJ Penn comes back and just looks, underwhelming, to be polite about it. But I am curious. I am curious. Like, even if Anderson Silva came out and brutally knocked out Uriah Hall, or Uriah Hall came out and brutally knocked out Anderson Silva, I'd be like, all right, that's great. That's a cool knockout. But it's like, and Anderson Silva beat Uriah Hall. Who cares? He's not any closer to winning a title. He's not closer to contention. And if Uriah Hall did the same thing, it's like, oh, all right. I don't think he's going to be a champion anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? I guess you could say the same thing about BJ, but I'm just more curious as to how BJ is going to look under the tutelage of, Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn.
Well, I'll tell you what, Cole Miller missing out on that huge fight with Conor McGregor. I mean, he had to pull out of that one. People don't remember they were supposed to fight each other. A lot of trash talk and build up, and it was a shame that he missed out on that payday. I mean, losing a fight to McGregor, I think even that does a lot for opponents. A lot more people watch them after that, and they make a bit more money. So it's good to see, bang, life works in different and wonderful ways, and now he gets to fight against BJ Penn, who isn't on the level of a Conor McGregor, but still a big name and someone that if he gets a win over or does fight, will get a lot of attention for. So good on you, Cole Miller.
For sure. All right, let's talk about this main event before we wrap up. Stipe Miocic versus Fabrizio Verdum going to enemy territory. Did you think that Stipe could do it? Who did you think was going to win this fight before it actually took place?
Well, I had to look at Robin Black's breakdown, and the whole hot lava thing, the more he repeated it, the more I was like, yeah, hot lava. Hot lava. But then at the end of it, I still thought Stipe was going to win it. Look, he was my whole view on the fight. Yes, Verdum was dangerous, and yes, obviously, he's got more weapons because you can't really take him down because it's dangerous. So he can utilize more kicks and knees and all that kind of stuff. But I just feel like Stipe is in the prime of his career right now, and I think he's hitting on all cylinders. And to me, it feels like Verdum, with it past injury and the time away from the cage, he's just a bit older. And I thought that the youth and the fact that Stipe was so hungry, the fact that he was getting better and better with his striking, he has some really interesting footwork that he uses. I actually thought he was going to beat Verdum. I just had a feeling he was going to do it. I didn't think it was going to be that quick. I thought Verdum was going to put up more of a fight. I thought at one point Verdum was a guy that would constantly improve more and more every fight, but I didn't feel like he got a little bit comfortable in his position as champion. But I think a lot of times when you become champion, you lose a little bit of that hunger. And I just felt like Stipe was the hungry guy by a huge margin in this fight. So, yeah, I thought he was going to win it. What about you?
Yeah, I feel you on the hunger part, and I had like this, I can see him doing it, but honestly, when you look at their actual skill set, I thought that with Stipe, all right, he's got wrestling, but that may not be a great idea against Verdum. Even though, like, these days, look, you see people go to the ground against Verdum, and it's not like he's just going to submit them straight away. You saw Travis Brown on the ground with Verdum, who isn't known for great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he survived plenty. So did Mark Hunt. So I thought that, all right, it's not a death sentence, but then really, as far as striking, Stipe is primarily a boxer. He's faster, he's more athletic, but he's a boxer. With Verdum, he's got kicks, he's got punches, he's got a good jab. If you're getting close, he's got the clinch, and that's something that Stipe Miocic doesn't really have. He's not really all that offensive in the clinch. So I just thought that, I thought that eventually Verdum was going to beat him. I was predicting a submission in the middle, to the later rounds. But man, what a performance by Stipe! I really appreciated his game plan. What he basically did, he stayed at the perfect range. He was jabbing, he didn't overcommit to anything, and he was taking very small, short steps. Because with Verdum, if you stay on the outside, he'll pick you apart with a jab or long kicks. And if you get in really close and if you overcommit to things, even if you have him hurt, he'll tie you up in the clinch, and then he'll turn the situation around. He'll land knees, and he'll land punches on the inside. And Stipe was at that perfect range the whole time. And he actually frustrated Verdum. He basically did the exact opposite of what Cain Velasquez did, who just went straight forward like a bulldozer and ran into all sorts of punches, all sorts of, strikes from the clinch. And Stipe kind of frustrated Verdum to the point where Verdum was the one chasing him, and then he got countered, and it was an amazing shot where Stipe was backpedaling. I think what happened was he sort of lost his balance against the cage, and I think Verdum thought he was hurt. So he went into hot pursuit, started chasing him. Stipe was backpedaling, and you see him for a split second plant his feet, throw that punch, and then keep moving backwards. He didn't expect to knock him out, and then Verdum just dropped, did the front face plant, smash into the ground. It was awesome. It was a great game plan, an amazing fight. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, Stipe is a really unique fighter because he can do that. He's got that striking ability where he can sort of stop in a spot and then change direction really quickly and throw strikes. And I mean, a lot of guys like to sort of move back and forward, side to side, but he changes all these different directions, and he does it really, really quickly. So his striking style is very, very interesting, and he's able to throw strikes very quickly when he pivots and changes those directions. Yeah, I was very, very impressed by what he was able to do. And then what about the post-fight celebration? I mean, he pretty much leaped over. And by the way, I want to say, Stipe, we've been around the guy quite a bit. He's been on our show a lot of times. Super chill guy. Doesn't really get overly. You don't see the excitement in his face too many times. He's a really chilled out guy. But when he wins, much like in the Andrei Arlovski fashion, he's a scary guy to be around. You just never know what's going to happen. He leaped over that cage, gave some massive hugs, was just going crazy in that ring. I mean, it was just great to see. It was a fantastic moment there.
What about when he was wide-eyed and he was like, "I'm the champion. I'm the world champion. I'm the world champion." He just couldn't believe it. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know. Like it literally escaped him that he was the champion. He couldn't believe it. How amazing was that?
He worked so hard for that title. He had a rough road. A lot of people really underestimated him. He was in the right place in the right time to get this Verdum fight because Cain got injured and that fight never happened, and he didn't have to fight Rothwell. Then he fought Arlovski. I mean, the whole thing. He had a tough journey to the title, and going through it, going all the way to Brazil and going through what he went through with the fans and blah, 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 and everybody saying, oh, Verdum will probably beat him, and becoming champion. I mean, it's a great story. Even the Cavs, the NBA team, through some support on Twitter, he's got a lot of support through it. I'm hoping that he shows more personality in the future, and he's able to be a bigger draw for the UFC than he is now.
The good thing about Stipe, first of all, he's young. He's 33, which is really good for the heavyweight division. And I'm not about to jump on board and say, he's the new, the new coming of Fedor. It's Cain Velasquez, now it's going to be Stipe. Who knows? He's going to be facing Alistair Overeem next. At least that's what everybody thinks. But the good thing about Stipe, other than his age, is if you want to put him on, say, talk shows or, in the media or do stories about him, he's a paramedic and a firefighter. And I think that's something that a lot of people can get behind. He's not a big talker. He has a great personality, but I think he's a little bit of an introvert. You can throw anything at him, and he's more than happy to take jokes and things like that. But I think the story kind of sells itself. He's a blue-collar guy, paramedic, firefighter, still has both jobs. and is the world champion, and he still trains. How crazy is that? And he doesn't have any intentions on stopping either one of those jobs anytime soon. So I think that's a lot. I think those are, that's a combination that a lot of people can get behind, and a lot of people can, relate. They're just, most MMA fans, they're just people who, they have their jobs and they have this guilty pleasure of watching MMA on the weekends, and then it's back to work on Monday, and it's the same thing for Stipe.
Yeah, and he's the champion now, and he's actually getting married very, very soon, within the next few weeks, I think. He's getting married as well. So, look, it's a great sort of month for Stipe. I mean, I wonder if he's going to wear the belt down the aisle. I don't know if he's going to do it or not, but we always talk about great places to wear the belt. Why not wear it at your wedding? Could be like a double whammy.
Yeah. And you know what else is good? Stipe being the champion, he's a European champion. So if they ever want to do any big European cards, like they could go back to, say, a Rotterdam or Germany or Sweden or anywhere, and even say like an Ireland, and people from all over Europe will travel, especially from Croatia to. If they go back to UFC Croatia, imagine that. That'd be a massive event. I don't know what kind of massive stadiums or arenas they have in Croatia, but yeah, I mean you got to think Stipe will be on that card.
Yeah, so it'll be an interesting thing to see what happens next. Obviously, like you said, Overeem most probably. And then if he's able to get through Overeem, you'd think Junior Dos Santos would make his way to a title shot, considering he's beaten him previously. But yeah, the division is shaken up, and we'll see what happens with Verdum. He wants a fight with Fedor. Obviously, a lot of hurdles to get through for Fedor to actually get signed to the UFC. But if Fedor ever wants to go to the UFC, I think he's got to do it while Verdum is still actively fighting in the division. So see what happens there, man. But it was a great win for Stipe, and another quick win for him. I mean, what else could you want?
Yeah, with Verdum, if he doesn't get Fedor, I wouldn't mind seeing him against Ben Rothwell. They're both coming off losses. Ben Rothwell needs something that'll get him back up in the rankings and get back momentum. And I think that'd be a good fight for both guys.
Yeah, agreed. So that would be a good fight there. And it's interesting because there's just not that many fights to make in the division. I mean, all of a sudden you look at Mark Hunt. Maybe if Mark Hunt gets a couple of wins for all the Aussie fans out there, he could almost make his way back up the division as well. With Junior being out with the shoulder, Rothwell might get someone else. Arlovsky's coming off a loss. Brown, who knows what's going to happen with him and Kane. So the division's pretty wide open at the moment for someone to come in and take advantage of a good position and a good opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. It's exciting times. I mean, again, we can't stress enough. It's got to be Overeem for that next title shot. I know we didn't get to talk about it because we didn't have a show last week, and people were discussing, who gets the next title shot? Is it Alistair Overeem? Is it the winner of Brown Velasquez? No way, man. You got to strike while that iron's hot, while Overeem's still on a streak, because you never know when that's going to end. And Overeem versus Miocic, man, that's going to be a fun fight. I'm really excited for that one.
Yeah, it'll be Overeem, in my opinion, looking over at Miocic like, I'm the K1, the striking champion. What are you going to do to me? And then we'll see what happens. We'll see if Stipe is able to utilize that striking like he has in his last few fights. And it's going to be a very good matchup. It's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen. It's going to be very exciting for fans to see. I think the UFC will go with Overeem. I would not want to see the winner of Travis Brown and Cain Velasquez get that next shot. I don't think that would make sense at all.
And the other thing is, I think what the UFC are happy about is that they've got a champion who is, not only reliable but can fight often. I think that the UFC, look, I know they've invested a lot in Cain, and listen, I love Cain as a fighter, but he's just spent so much time on the shelf. I think in some ways, and I know they wanted to really crack that Mexican market and have that Mexican champion and have him for all those big, Mexican events. But at the same time, what's the point of having a guy who can draw if he fights, once a year or once every 2 years? So we'll see. He's saying that he's changed up his methods at AKA. We'll see if he can stay healthy. But I think the UFC kind of relieved that they've got someone who will be able to stay healthy and someone they can actually rely on.
And a small heavyweight as champion. Good news for John Jones. Who knows when he's going to jump over to the heavyweight division? A lot of people saying it'll be quite a while away, but hey, maybe that makes him happier about it, makes him move there quicker. So we'll see what happens. But Cass, there you go. A crazy weekend of fights. UFC 198, a few cancellations, but nevertheless delivered a great event, a lot of fun fights, and a good time had. I mean, it's great to be back as well. A lot of people missing Submission Radio. We've missed you guys. But next week, because there is no event, we want to get your questions in. We've tried this before, and we want to bring it back. We want you guys to shoot through your questions to us. It could be about MMA. You can get our thoughts on anything in the world of MMA, but we're going to open it up further. Any questions that you have, anything that you want our opinion on, send us through the questions, and we'll choose the best ones, included in the episode, obviously give you the credit and give you a good answer. Sometimes we feel like fans want to hear our opinion on a number of things, but unfortunately, we're restricted to what's happening in the world of MMA. This opens up the gates and lets you find out our opinions on a whole bunch of things. To send that through to us, it's info@submissionradio.com. We'll chuck that up on our Twitter page. We'll chuck that up on our Facebook page. We might even include it in the description under this YouTube video. Shoot us through your questions, and we'll choose the best ones, and we'll try and get that going. We can't guarantee that we'll be able to do it every week, because sometimes there's a whole bunch of topics and big events, so we won't be able to cover questions every week. But like next week, when there's no event and we've got plenty of time, we'd love to sit down and go through some of your questions.
Yeah, and even if we do have those big shows where we get like journalists on, we have a lot to talk about, we don't have time to answer fan questions, and we can sort of store them and answer them a little bit, later on as well, if they're if they're not such a timely question. You guys can hit us up on Twitter as well, @SubmissionAUS. You only have like about 140 characters, so if it's a short question, why not shoot us a tweet? But if you do want to give us an extended one, info@submissionradio.com. Shoot us an email. You can just go to our website, submissionradio.com, scroll to the very bottom of the contact us, and feel free to write us a bit of a cheeky message. And like Dennis said, look, it's obviously an MMA show, so, primarily MMA questions. But if you want to ask something random, if you've been watching a TV show or something, want a movie review on something, feel free to ask us a question. Something personal. It can be whatever. We want to be known as the People's Show, and it's all about being interactive. We've spent a lot of time, probably not as much time recently as we'd like to, but we need to get back on that, chatting to you guys in the comments on YouTube. But we want to take that next big jump, make it even more interactive. So info@submissionradio.com, send us your questions.
Yeah, that's right. And if you do want to sort of guarantee that we see it through Twitter, is always good, but because it's a timely thing and we want to come back around to some good questions later on, if we're not doing it that week, we'll probably recommend going through that email, because it's a lot easier for me and Casper to keep an eye on it. And make no mistake about it, me and Casper are the ones who read your messages on Facebook and Twitter and through the email. So there's no Submission Radio intern pretending to be us. It's us. We love doing it, and we're excited to bring this to the episode next week. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if you want to guarantee that we answer your questions, send money. Money's good. You like money? Timeshares also, if you want to send like the keys to a nice apartment somewhere like, I don't know, we're not fast, Hamptons, Napa Valley, whatever you can spare. We're cool.
Make
with
a
that
couch
as well.
available. We'll be there.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Massive thank you to you guys for listening. Again, huge apologies for not being around for the last couple of weeks, but it's great to be back. Big thank you to our guests, Ricardo Lamas, Stephen Thompson, and the always wonderful TJ Dillashaw. And that's pretty much it, man. That's a wrap. Any other final words? Anything we got to remind the people about, Dennis?
Well, since this is a show that comes out of Australia, how could we forget and neglect the great Dami Im, who came second in Eurovision? How about that? Australia coming second in Eurovision. And, of course, the country where I'm from, Ukraine, coming first. So I guess you could say I'm having a Stipe kind of day.
Who's Dami?
She's the person from Australia who represented Australia in the Eurovision contest, the singing contest.
Great. Well, congratulations to this person.
You didn't know Dennis gets across the Eurovision, did you?
I didn't know. This is new things that I'm learning about
talents.
You. Dami,
this is why we need fans to send in questions so they could discover more about our sick obsessions.
Dami's a man or a woman?
She's a woman.
She's a woman. Okay, just checking. Okay, you never
Last
know.
time I checked.
You never know with Eurovision. All right, well, fantastic. I mean, I may not know Dami, but she's doing big things. What did she come second?
Second out of everyone. She was supposed to come first, and then Ukraine came first, and maybe they just maybe they were like the Brazilian judges. They just didn't want to see Australia win Eurovision. So we would be like, why is Australia in Eurovision, and why are they winning?
I'm not sure we should be applauding Dami. I mean, second, that's the first loser, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, Poland was in there as well. I think they did decently, and Russia couldn't pay off enough people and didn't win it. So there you go.
I was going to say, Ukraine, do you think they paid anyone off? Do you think they cut a deal backstage to eliminate Dami?
I think the question is, how many people did they pay off, and how many deals did they cut? I don't know, man. It's a crazy world of Eurovision. I think we might need to get John McCarthy on the show to talk about Eurovision judging and rule making. Get into some of that stuff next time.
And I think we need to start becoming Eurovision judges so we can get paid off, because money is always rocks. Anyway, that's it, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Stay safe.